Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to HC Live Build Day. Here is Alistair Cook.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the very first vBrownBag Build Day live streaming event. I'm frankly quite excited and somewhat terrified to be building a data center infrastructure live on the internet because, of course, everything that goes on the internet stays on the internet forever, and every mistake I make during this, including that one, will be analyzed forever. Joining me in this terrifying journey to building enterprise infrastructure is Richard Greenwald from HPE.
Hi, Alistair.
Hey, good to have you here this morning. And as we go through this process, I'm playing the customer who is deploying the HC380 Hyper Converged platform that is the topic for our build day. And Richard is playing the role of the systems engineer from the partner. So I'm trying to be as stupid as I can. As you know, I'm trying to be me. So really, that's the same thing.
Oh.
And Richard is being the subject matter expert here.
Yes, I'll be working with you through this installation of the HC380, adding it to the existing data center, and I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. And just very quickly, what is your role with HPE?
So sure, I work in the technical marketing division of Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I work on creating marketing material and technical training for our partners and customers, and it's not just the high-level positioning, but actually what are the specifications? How does it work? How do you install it? So this is really cool and working right with you.
Right. And one of the main references we're going to use through this is the installation guide for the HC380. Were you actually involved in writing that? I should have checked before I asked you.
I was not involved in writing that actually, but it's a very good document. It's available on the public website, so anybody installing this can go out there, get that. It is really a step-by-step guide, and we'll more or less be following that.
And then we have a couple of other people. Manning all of the computers that are making the live stream work is Mr. Jeffrey Powers. I think he is carefully studying all of the streaming at this moment and is not going to put a smiling face up. There's a smiling face.
There's my smiling face. How you guys doing out there? I'm just Command Central. So just really quick notes that you might not be seeing it on the Facebook Live because I think that they've just turned our stream off. But YouTube, go over to YouTube, let other people know it's on the YouTube channel, and we'll go from there.
And then we have a couple of other people from HPE who are sitting in the backgrounds. You'll see some video that we recorded with Greg Park, and he is there as an escalation for us as well. And he's told his colleagues that if we see him on video, it's because something has gone wrong. Because really that's his role in this kind of deployment. He comes in if there's an issue that the partner needs some escalation with.
Yes.
So we're going to use him in the same way. The other person I'd like to mention that is not going to be on camera, but is answering some questions on YouTube and Facebook, is Becca Taylor. And she is the person who has been the champion for vBrownBag Build Day and has really made this happen. And we're really grateful for her support in making this happen. So the general run for today. Socials, yes. That's why I bring Jeff on these things, because he remembers that we are social animals and we need to share. So do share with your friends that this stream is available on YouTube, and you can see us also on Facebook. We have our Facebook page, and I think Jeffrey is probably going to try and get us back up on there, but Facebook doesn't look like it's playing ball. Everything is up on YouTube. And of course Twitter, follow us as vBrownBag, and we have the #HC380 Build Day as the hashtag for this event, and that'll be watched as we play along. So definitely ask your questions in the stream. We have the experts here to answer those questions, and it's a great time to get more information. If there's things that you'd like to see, if we skip over something fast, if you'd like to see it a little more clearly, if there is something you'd like us to demonstrate, this is all live environments, and so please do ask along the streams in YouTube and let us know what you'd like to see. If you have detailed technical questions, then we're going to send them back up through the chain, and you've got a collection of people behind you that you escalate to?
Yes, we have a support group, a list that we can email out to. We can get technical answers back, so even if it's not something that's a common issue when we encounter it, depending upon a customer's individual environment, we can help support the customer adding this to their existing environment, doing a clean deployment of it, whatever they need.
Right, and so we are getting the same support that a real customer would get.
Yes.
All right. What else do we need to cover before we start looking into the technologies? I think we're nicely in. So, oh yeah, the structure. Can I have the running list up? The PowerPoint with the
First one?
yeah, that first one with my bars on it. No, the other one. That's the fella. So this is what we're going to go through today. So we're doing the introductions and outline. I'm going to run through what it is that we've got actually as the customer environment that I brought with me from New Zealand. Then we'll have a look at the preparation work. My customer that I brought with me doesn't actually have a lot of HP infrastructure deployed out yet, so there's some preparation work and some checking of the environment as well. Mm-hmm. We'll run through the initial deployment wizard that builds the first HC380 cluster, and then there's a second wizard that runs to put all of the management infrastructure in front of that. And
Correct.
Those two pieces we'll run through. And then we'll look at this VM vending machine, which is a really important part of the HC380 solution.
It makes it real easy for a non-technical person to get a VM right away if they need it. They can select a name, a few simple steps, select a size, and it's going to be deployed right away.
So that's one of the really important features of the HC380. And then at the end, we're going to migrate on all of the virtual machines that I brought over here in my checked bag from New Zealand. So now I'll switch over, if I can have my desktop up, and we'll have a look at the environment that I brought over in my Pelican case from New Zealand. And Jeff, that's showing a little stretched on my screen. I can't quite see everything. But what you can see is that I've got a single, great, thank you, a single ESX server here. This is what the customer has. It has only local storage, so the internal DS2 is a data store which is inside this DL360 sitting in a rack here. And you can see a collection of virtual machines that are being managed here through a virtual center. Being an old-fashioned guy, I quite like that I have vSphere client and vCenter version 6 in here, because the web client is still not my favorite place to work.
Okay.
In here we've just got a small number of virtual machines. I've got a few Linux virtual machines running in here that just provide a bit of workload. And if we go through this, you may recognize, if you're familiar with my AutoLab, you may recognize that the IP address schema actually is AutoLab. And so the 192.168.199 subnet is what I build AutoLab on, and that's what we're using. And you'll see also that the subnets we use for storage and vMotion match up to AutoLab. So I built it using AutoLab and then used that just as a foundation. What else have we got in here? Just a small collection of virtual machines. It's a really pretty lightweight environment because I had to bring it over here on an Intel NUC, and it doesn't allow me to run a lot of virtual machines.
No, but it represents the existing customer environment and that you can migrate it over, which is great.
Yeah, and one of the important things that we wanted to do in this was treat it like it was a customer who had some sunk investment in their vSphere environment and wanted to bring that across. Now, that's not always the way that you deploy HC380.
Correct. So it could be deployed just as a standalone environment. It's got integrated vCenter on it if the customer wanted to use that. They don't need a separate software. In this particular case, it doesn't have to be, and we have a remote vCenter, and we can still use that, migrate our existing VMs over if we have a sunk cost involved in that.
Yeah, and I think this is probably a good time to look at the configuration you get on this HC380
Sure.
when it comes from the factory. So Jeffrey, can we have that diagram up, that graphic?
So
yeah.
yes, if you just buy this standalone box, it comes on the HPE DL380 Gen 9 server. You get everything you see here, the storage, the networking, the compute power. But you get all these different software VMs on there as well, pre-integrated from the factory. So you have one view, but it's not what you would directly interface with in deploying and managing these VMs. You have integrated ESX, the store virtual to manage the different storage nodes, but you have a couple other things that you do interface with. So one of the first ones we're going to use during the setup process is OVIO, or One View Instant On. It's a setup for the deployment. We will go through, I would sit down with you as a partner, go through kind of like a pre-deployment checklist. We can gather all the necessary information and we will enter that in OVIO, and that helps us set everything up. During this setup process, we will use the integrated VMware vCenter, and there's in this particular case, HPE has a OneView for vCenter plugin, or OV for VC. We're going to be using that, but at the end user, if they just want a simplified VM vending experience, we have the HC380 management user interface, and we'll be talking about that later today. But a customer can just go in, select, I want a new VM, add a name, network, OS image, select small, medium, large, and it's going to be deployed.
So on one of the things that is, a couple of things that are interesting in here. So we have vSphere is the thing that you will see when you boot this. So if you attach console to it, it's an ESXi server. And the storage is what's currently called Store Virtual.
Correct.
What I recall as the left-hand VSA, so the iSCSI based scale-out storage solution. It's been around for quite a while and has acquired a few features over time. Mm-hmm. And that's what provides us the scale-out storage cluster that's part of a hyperconverged solution.
Correct.
But every node has that, as well as having the pieces to be the management of the entire infrastructure. So you have that vCenter server, and the management appliances are all on each node.
Exactly. So then it doesn't matter which node you plug into when you first start the deployment. You can just pick one. It will become the C node. It has everything you need already there. And through the OVIO tool, we'll give it the addresses of the other nodes. It will go out, contact them, and continue the setup process. But you don't have to remember where you put it in the rack or which one was there. It's all already there.
And then, of course, afterwards, that seed node isn't special. It's just another node.
Exactly. So once we start with that C node, it will contact the other nodes. It will spread the storage across everything, so it is transparent. If one node were to go down, it doesn't impact the customer. So there's nothing special about it after the initial deployment.
Right. So one of the things that we found as we ran through a dry run, so Jeffrey and I have been working here with Richard and Greg for the whole week. And of course we ran a dry run so that when we hit the roadblocks that those of you who've done these projects before know are inevitable, they wouldn't make the stream go very quiet for a while. We wanted to make sure that we found those roadblocks before this. And I think that the biggest roadblock we had was the fact that I didn't actually do any planning.
So we would sit down with you as a customer and do the planning of, okay, it's an existing data center. We want to migrate that over. So that is certainly part of an actual deployment every time. And that type of information goes into OneView or OneView Instant On, and that eases the transition. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the other thing we hit was we were doing a lab build and not following best practices around segregating our storage and management networks, and that caused us an issue, and we had to actually put our big boy pants on and do it properly. And then everything ran really nice and smoothly once we committed to doing it properly.
We stuck with it. We had the escalation process in place. We had certain experts. They got us through it, and we did get the deployment out.
Yeah, and we still, I think we started about lunchtime on Tuesday to do that build, and we got the builds progressed through on Tuesday. It's not like it took us from Monday at 9 a.m. to do the dry run until Wednesday evening.
Correct.
We got through that, and yesterday we were pretty comfortable that this is going to run nicely today. So there's a couple of pieces in this that we're going to do. So the first thing is that most customers that are deploying HC380 are probably existing HPE customers. Mm-hmm. And they will have the HPE management portfolio in place. They've probably got full OneView and OneView for Virtual Center, but I wanted to show that deployment as well. So most customers deploying this will already have the OneView plugin for vCenter.
For vCenter, correct.
And what's the value of that plugin in very brief?
You'll get all the benefits of HPE OneView, but if you wish to manage from vCenter instead of the OneView appliance, you get all the same benefits, but it helps our customers manage as they feel most comfortable.
And it gives lots of visibility of the HPE features inside the vCenter interface you're used to.
Exactly, correct. So in this particular case, you're going to show the installation of that. That's great. We can install that and then also migrate that vCenter over to this new cluster to manage the entire environment.
Okay, so the first thing I think is we need to actually find these downloads, because one of the challenges often is on an enterprise site.
Where are they?
Finding the downloads.
But we're going to get them all, and we're going to have them available for this audience after the fact.
Yes, so we'll put some short circuit links in, but of course that only helps you find the HC380 information. If there are other HPE products you're working with, then you'll need to be able to find those as well. So Jeffrey, can we go back to my desktop again? And I just go to hpe.com as my naive first way of finding things, and I think we actually found that to be quite effective the other day. As we wait for the intertubes and we hit the support site, and we're going to head into the downloads section. Is this the right way? Have I gone the right place? There we go, HPE servers, storage and networking.
Okay.
And then I'm going to do the product search for the HC380.
HC380.
Now, one of the other ways I've found these support resources is to go to my favorite support tool of Google.
Right.
And say, Google, I want the installation guide for HPE HC380. And it took me straight to the download page, and I like that. And HC380, interestingly, hits quite a lot of different HPE products. So I just put Hyper to get the Hyper Converged product in.
Correct.
So this is the flip side of the wonderful thing of having so many different products in the portfolio, is that there are so many different products in the portfolio.
There's a lot of documents to sort through, but...
So I head on into the software and firmware, driver software and firmware link. Oh, did I go the wrong place in there? That took me back to a generic page. I'm trying to remember where I went in there. This is the live joy. All right, I'm going to go find my shortcut links that take me to everything, and I'm going to use those because I think it's a little more interesting to actually get to the content than to show you me flailing around and failing my search foo. And it's like typing in front of other people. When you type in front of other people, you get things wrong.
You're fine the rest of the time, and absolutely, it happens to everybody.
So here's my nice friendly URL, which I'm fat fingering as I do my copy and paste.
That's okay, they can't see it right now. A quick shout out to Alan Himes, who basically said the checklist is the most important thing. So he's just also reiterating what Greg Park, excuse me, only one. Greg Park is also on. He's tweeting in the chat room on YouTube.com. vBrownBag.
Nice to have some people following along and offering their feedback as well. So I followed the link back in the desktop. Jeff, back in the desktop, I followed my link to the downloads page for the HC380.
Excellent.
And we'll publish that link as well. And in here, there's a variety of things that we need to download. And it's this one view for VMware vCenter is the first one we're going to use. And that's the one that gets us that integration that most customers will already have deployed.
Correct.
And the other one we're going to use is this hyperconverged validation tool. What's that one about?
So this is a great tool that we run before the deployment of these nodes. It actually goes out, it checks a couple things. It checks that each node can communicate to the top of rack switch. It checks that all the nodes have the same storage configuration. The storage has to be the same across all the nodes we deploy, whether it's 2 nodes or up to 16 nodes. We need the same number of drive blocks. It's going to check that before we get too far along in the deployment process. If anyone ever had to do a reset, this validation tool would also check that the reset was done correctly. And this is pretty neat because it's happening now at the beginning of the deployment process. We could go back and do it again rather than once we spend a lot of time and get 90% of the way through.
Great. And so what I'm going to do is I've pre-created a virtual machine that we're going to use for the one view for vCenter install. So I'm just going to minimize out all my other windows, and I'm going to open an RDP connection up to my OneView for vCenter machine. And this is just a Windows machine. Come on, let me type my password correctly. Find the right machine, make sure I'm going the right place. And there we go. Type my password a little more slowly and it's all good. So it's just a Windows machine. There's nothing particularly special. It was, what did we decide for the config for this one? One CPU, not very much RAM.
But that's fine. It serves the purpose of an existing Windows machine.
And it's just a conduit. Now the reason I've had to do a separate Windows machine is that my vCenter server is the appliance.
Mm-hmm.
This would normally be installed on the vCenter server, I imagine, for most deployments. Through the magic of TV, I've pre-downloaded the installer, and we'll just run the installer now. Away we go with install anywhere. And so, say existing customers already have this. Is there any particular driver to having more recent versions, keeping the versions up to date on there?
It would be good if you had the more recent product releases. The newer software releases will cover those. If there's any known existing bugs, it would address those as well. So
it is in that normal life cycle management of management tools that you do need to keep them up to date. Progress along. Shortly we will be ready to do something in this install. And then it becomes a very normal Windows software install. Click continue. Say yes, I realize this is all about managing HP products. Yes, I agree to be Meg Whitman's butler for the next 5 years. I'm going to do a custom install just to show some of the things. Yes, I agree to be Richard's butler for the 4 years following Meg Whitman's butler service. And this is the particular one I wanted to hit, because one of the issues that we had during the dry run was that this was a vanilla 2008 R2 install, and so the firewall was turned on.
Right.
We have a collection of ports in use here. We can change those, can't we? Are there any consequences if we change these? Does it make our life harder if we change these ports?
So if the firewall's on, it can cause problems later on, and this was one of the issues we hit, but we're going to turn the firewall off, leave the ports on. So
we've left the firewall off on this machine, but you could equally, if your security policy required it, you could just pinhole this consecutive ports, because it is just a set of consecutive ports. It's 3500 up to 3511, so you just have one port range opened up.
Okay.
So it's pretty easy. And then we don't have a, oh, hang on, nope, I've chosen the wrong option. We're saying no, we don't want to import a database because we don't have one. And then vSphere users, there's ways to restrict who can use OneView for vSphere. That's interesting.
Okay.
Do you think there's a use case? Where do you think customers would use that restriction?
Depending on different roles in an organization, I'm sure there's others that we could explore as well.
Okay. But of course, you don't get that option if you do the typical install. Then we need to tell it where our vCenter is. So it's on lab.local, username. So I'm going to do all of the interactive things using a user ID of VIadmin.
Okay.
So we can see that. And then I'm going to use the administrator account to do all of the things that are the HP integrated tools.
Okay.
So administrator at vSphere.local, nice secure password. And now to show that we've actually put the right vCenter server in, we check the certificate, and of course if we had a proper trusted certificate PKI in place, then we get good certificates, but we're using the self-signed. install summary, and we just say go do it. Now this install takes a few minutes to complete, 5 minutes. So let's fill that time, Jeffrey, with the video that Richard and I recorded earlier on unboxing this HC380 that we have on the desk with us now. Richard and I are going to do an unboxing of an HC380 node. For a lot of you, it's going to be very familiar because the hardware is simply a DL380 generation. What generation are we on now?
Gen 9.
Gen 9? Still the Gen 9?
Yes.
Okay, well, here it is. Here's the box that you'll get it in, and let's have a look what's inside. Oh, look, lots of lovely styrofoam or carbon foam or whatever foam this is. And a little dig into the corners, bring it all out, and I'll bring the box over the back of my side, and plastic bag. So this is pretty close to what you'll get from the factory, nice and wrapped up. So in the front we have 3 modules of disks, 3
Correct.
packs of disks. At the moment we've got a configuration which is 2 SSDs, which presumably is our performance tier, and then 6 SAS hard drives. They're 10K SAS hard drives. So
Hybrid configuration.
they give you lots of capacity, but quite good performance. They're not like 7K SATA disks that are in there, so they're still giving you some good performance when you're into the capacity tier.
Correct.
So this node is as they normally arrive with 2 of those packs, and there's space for a 3rd one.
Right, depending upon customer configuration.
And then on the front, what else have we got?
The USB key, this is a toe tag with individual ILO, serial number type information.
Always nice to have that accessible without taking it out of the rack. Some vendors will put that on the side of the unit and you can't take it out while it's powered on.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then let's take a look around the back. We've got 2 power supplies, normal redundant power, and then a bucket of network ports. We've got.
So in this particular configuration, this is our 2 10 gig ports. This is configurable depending upon what the customer would like. They could get 1 gig ports there as well for possibly remote branch office. This particular one is 10 gigs. We have ILO, and then this is various factory and installation ports.
Right. And then we've got the usual collection of expansion slots in here. Being a 2U enclosure, you get plenty of expansion on these. And I guess we should take a look inside and see what's in those expansion bays.
See what's inside.
So it's the usual flip up,
Yes.
slide off, nice easy sheet metal lid to come off, no screws to get caught on, and that one comes and connects and disconnects really freely. Some of the enclosures, and particularly the older DL380s, it could be a bit of a job to get them in and out.
It's hard to get them in and out.
Engineering's been good.
That lever's pretty neat, yep.
Now, one of the things that immediately strikes me, and let's get this back so the edge is on, one of the things that immediately strikes me is this NVIDIA grid card. I quite like one of these to take home, but I don't imagine I'm allowed to take this one.
It would be nice.
Why have we got that one?
So this particular configuration is for VDI, and they will have graphics cards installed in them. We also have the 10 gig network card RAID controller as well to connect the different drive blocks up here in the front. This is 2 CPU. We see the memory DIMMs in between the CPUs and on the edges. This is sheathing to help with airflow. We've got the fans at the top. These red tabs mean they are hot pluggable.
In this particular model, only about 1/3 of the DIMM slots have been populated.
Correct.
Only the white ones, not the black and the blue. So this one's got plenty of space for expansion, both in the disk in the front as well as in the RAM.
Correct.
Depending upon the workload.
Customers configure that depending on what they need for their particular workload, but they are expandable, yes.
Yeah, and with particularly with the grid card in here, you're looking at a high-performance VDI desktop in this, and so you're probably going to saturate CPU relatively fast on this one.
Yes.
And that's why there was the 10 gig in there, is because this is the VDI build for it.
Exactly.
So there's a gap here at the back left that's got nothing in it, and that's, knowing HP's engineering, that space is for something.
Customers can order SSDs in there depending upon the workload for caching, just acceleration. This particular model doesn't have those, but that is something that could go in this spot right here.
This is the commodity chassis, 2U chassis that HP produces, and so it gets tasked with all kinds of different purposes.
Yes.
Here it is. They're a nice workhorse piece of hardware, and I remember them from the days of the G1 and the G2 with a compact badge, and we're in a compact office here, or an ex-compact office here, so it's nice to have a ProLiant here. Richard and I will be around doing a number of other looks at the HC380 and a walkthrough of the build process as well, so catch us for those videos.
So we're back, and that showed the unboxing of a single node of an HC380. The minimum configuration is 2 nodes, so you'd have 2 times that for the smallest configuration. If you had, you can go up to 16 nodes if you had a large HC deployment. Now that's if you ordered an individual standalone package. HPE offers a lot of factory express work where we can work with the customer. We can see exactly how many they want. We'll actually pre-rack it, pre-cable it, pre-power it to fit into their data center. And this just takes a lot of the work out of doing that. So that when it arrives at a customer site, they can just put it in and start connecting and powering it up to their own network and power.
That's one of the really cool things, because as we'll see in one of the other videos that we did with Greg Park, the deployments often are a cookie cutter going out to multiple locations. He talked about a manufacturing organization that send an HC380 cluster to each plant.
Exactly, and so that may not have a full data center staff, but they can be configured and make sure it's consistent to go out to each one of those individual plants.
All right, and you can see that the install of the OneView for vCenter is completed, and I'm just going to come in and say I don't really want to see the documentation, but we can just close the installer out. Now this is one of the places where we hit that issue with the firewall as we're doing the deployment, so I want to verify that the OneView for vCenter has deployed correctly. I'm going to open up my browser and I'm going to completely close it just to be sure. We struck an issue where you have to close the browser before the web client actually identifies that the new plugin is installed.
Not just
that confused the heck out of us, because we thought we just needed to close the web client tab.
Yes, not just the tab, it's the actual close the whole browser.
Yeah. So I'll go back to my vCenter server here and log in with my VI admin account. And my nice password. And the way that we see that the OneView for vCenter has deployed is that there will be a plugin and there'll be a couple of HPE logos in the home page here when it eventually loads. Web client being web client, it takes time. And in this case, that's a good sign, because there's a download, as with all plugins, there's a download to the client device to show us that HPE component, the plugin. And there it is. You can see that we have an HP Management Assistant icon in here and an HP Infrastructure icon.
Correct.
And if I look now at my ESXi server, because it's an HP asset, I get some HP management information here on the front page of it. So the HP management here will populate up, and eventually it'll populate up. Now I don't have a full OneView deployment here, so there's a limited amount of information in there. And of course,
correct.
Most customers are going to be deploying OneView for visibility across the assets, but that's not our focus. We may come back and talk OneView another day.
Okay.
So now that we've got OneView for vCenter installed, what's our next step?
We're going to go in and actually connect to the seed node and run the validation tool.
So normally an engineer would turn up with a laptop and plug into the back of the seed node.
Correct, and that's certainly one way to do it with the second port on the back. However, and that's documented in all our install guides, in this particular case, you have the networking already set up. So you can use a jump server and RDP into that server from right here, and that's certainly an easy way to do it.
So I've put an additional IP address on my machine so that it's on the same subnet as this standard IP addressing. So this 42.100 is standard across all the nodes. It's exactly the same on everyone. And
that's in the install guide. You will set your static IP. You go to that particular IP. It will connect to that seed node.
And then the password for this is documented in that same install guide. And hopefully I typed it correctly this time, because I've not been having a good hit rate at typing my passwords right. Looks good. So it's a Windows Server 2012 machine. And we pop across to the desktop, it auto starts.
OVIO, correct. So this is one way to do it. However, we want to make sure to run that validation tool, the network validation tool in advance. So, and we have to copy that over from the download we initially did. So stop
close the
correct.
OneView installer.
And it's available on the desktop, so when we resume this, we'll just double click it and start again.
So we should be able to find it. I've saved it into my downloads folder on this machine. And through the wonders of RDP, I have access to it. So I'm just going to copy it onto the desktop now and expand that. So this is the file that we downloaded from that same download site where we got OneView for vCenter. This is the validation tool here.
Correct.
And we're using the publicly available validate tool that's currently up on there.
The current version that's up there.
Is it likely that there's a newer version that I could possibly talk to my support engineers around?
Depending upon configuration, we can get another version here. It does check a few more things, but this is also a great way. It checks all the network connectivity and everything I said before.
Okay. So we're going to open the validator. Gee, I think I need to extract the validator, don't I?
Yes, it is a zipped folder.
It's extracted. I really should have just done it the way I did it last time, where I didn't extract all, and then I didn't extract all. And in here we have a batch file that we run that then launches the PowerShell script behind it.
Exactly. So we're going to go through, it's kind of a guided wizard. We're going to click yes. Let's go out and just search the other servers that is connected to.
And we can see the IPv6 discovery going on, which is very usual for a hyperconverged solution to use that for node discovery.
And in a second here, we're going to get a menu with different options that we can go through, for example, to check the networking. And if it does produce an error, it's okay. We can go fix it now. Maybe it's just something's not plugged in straight, but maybe a setting is not what is expected here versus on the switch. We can go configure that now. It's not a big loss yet in terms of invested time, but this tells us now.
So this is a really important part of our discovery phase. While it's doing that, so this is the OneView instant on component that we're RDP connected onto. So this, when we talk about the seed server and we're RDP'd on, that's a component in here, isn't it?
For the OVIO?
Yes.
So yes, the OneView instant on, we're going to run that in a second, and that's actually, but that's after we complete this network validation check. The OVIO is the guided process where we're going to take our pre-installation check sheet, and we're going to enter in all the IPs for ILO, for vMotion, everything, and that's going to go in and configure the system. So we're going to start that in just a second.
Right, and in the deployment guide, the installation guide for the HC380, there's a couple of pages where it says make notes of this information of IP addresses and things.
Exactly, and that's essentially what we're doing with the checklist. Now we have an Excel spreadsheet that you'll be posting online as well.
We do.
And it's just a collection of all those IP addresses. We verify they're not being used by anything else in the environment. And it also just collects everything in one place. So you can go through the install guide. It's all there as well, but this is just another alternative.
So this is our spreadsheet filled in with our numbers, and this is what I'm actually going to post for other people to download and use. And it really is just centralization of all of this information.
Exactly. So,
and so I'm just scrolling up to the top of it.
So this is something we would have sat down and discussed for your particular networking environment in advance, number of nodes, ILO addresses, and it's just all there, and it simplifies deployment.
Great. So we're going to be referring back to this document fairly regularly through the deployment.
Correct.
So it's important to gather this ahead of time. So if we go back into our, though we didn't need the OV for VC anymore, so we'll close him. Go back into our node where we've got the validation tool, and we'll run the network.
Click network, yes.
And the ESXi credentials are, these would have been reset when it was deployed, won't they? These will be the standard one. So now it's going out and connecting to the ESXi installs. And then we have,
if we go
here,
exactly,
we scroll down in our spreadsheet.
so it's asking us for the information about this deployment, and this is where we can we know exactly where it is. We don't have to go say what was that IP address. It's all right here.
And of course, if the customer has a good, robust IP address management, that's going to help us to fill these numbers in.
Absolutely. That's if that's all collected and together, that helps manage as well.
So we've got no VLAN. Our starting IP address is 192.168.199.11. vMotion is not on a VLAN. Where's our vMotion addresses? They are 172. I wonder if I can cut and paste that. Look at that, I can paste, but we did find that it doesn't like a trailing space.
It may grab an extra character, which is something to watch out for.
Yeah, that's Excel wanting to insert an extra character. And then I use just one number off on the octets for the storage network.
Okay.
So what's it doing at this stage?
So top of rack ping test, it is making sure that all the nodes can actually go and connect to that top of rack switch. What if it can't? What if there's a misconfiguration? This would tell us here. And we're going to wait till we actually get all 4 green circles, and that'll tell us that, that this stage is completed. And if not, it will tell us what it's expecting or what it didn't find, and we can go address that.
Maybe we should have broken something so that we'd actually get a red piece in here. Although, of course, we're not here to teach network troubleshooting or cabling.
My answer to that is no.
Jeffrey and I have both not been working in data centers a lot in the last few years, and the late night here as we worked through all of the deployment issues was a reminder of our days back as engineers doing real work in data centers. And I'm not sure that we felt that we wanted to make that transition back.
And again, if we sat down in advance and got through all the configurations, we could have minimized that. But
yes.
to coming here within the week to all the setup, we got through it.
And that was the plan. So.
And that's exactly what we planned for, yes. Yep. Helps us to identify what mistakes and errors along the way real customers will do. And
that's important too. It's not just all smooth all the time. We do encounter errors. We found some of them and we were able to tell everybody here today. So that's good education too.
And that's a really important element of what we're trying to do with the build day, is to not be a straight speed run, how fast can we build a hyper-converged solution? Because we could have manufactured this to build it and be done already. But we wanted to show the real experience for a real engineer going out and deploying this, and we wanted to cover as many of the possible things that could go wrong.
Exactly, and then we can address them. We can call them to everyone's attention just in a passing, and you see here we got all the green circles. So we can go ahead and click the back on the. We can review everything.
I was just going to scroll down all of these checks, just seeing the number of checks that are done in here. And you can see them in different phases. So there's one of these for each of the segments in that green circle.
Exactly.
Oh, look, green circles. So I guess we should do the storage.
Yes, let's go for storage next.
And what are we looking for here?
Again, are all the configurations between the nodes the same? That has to be consistent between the nodes. If somebody had we're combining 2 different hyperconverged deployments, some had the 2 drive blocks and some had 3, it would give an error and it will just trim it down to the smallest common denominator, which is fine, but we would like, if we have the extra storage, we'd like to use it.
All right, so that's going to trigger up and say, well, it's a mismatch configuration. Do you really want to carve off a piece?
And this could tell us here now, or we could say, oh, and sometimes these are distributed across a rack, a data center, or something. They're not. Oh, if they're not right together, this could be very helpful in terms of to replace a visual check.
Again, plenty of detail on what's been checked in there and that everything is successful.
Yep.
What about the audit? Should we do an audit?
Yes.
And what's the audit about?
It's just going to check final configuration before OVIO starts. So we're going to check that everything is configured properly.
And those have all passed. So that means we've got all green circles. That's got to be good.
So excellent. So this is the value of this tool. In this case, it's all green. If we had an error in actual deployment the first time we were running it, it would tell us here. We could go fix a network issue. We could go say, hey, the storage is mismatched, or what if there's a log file or something missing in the node for whatever reason. We can go address it here, and we want to make sure that all of those are green circles before we proceed to the next step. This saves us, because if these are all green, everything should go well after the fact. If we were to skip this step, or we have an error here and we overlook it, it could mean that, you know, later on in the deployment something doesn't work, and it's just going to be an issue later.
Okay, so this is sort of the validate and check. It's the
Exactly.
Yeah, make sure everything's good. So we'll close that out because we're finished with him.
Exactly, and so now we're going to go back to OneView Instant On, which is there on the desktop. Now this did auto start before. We stopped it because we wanted to run this validation check, but we're going to go back into OVIO now.
Let's ask for a feature request that there be a minimize button in this, so we could just restore it afterwards.
We can pass it on, yes.
So we've got, what, 5 license agreements to agree to in here?
We do, and we have to click each individual one. And
but the bottom 3 are all VMware license agreements that we're agreeing to.
yes.
So the default in here is a local vCenter. That's
So correct. So when we were talking about what ships on the server before, it had that local vCenter. And if you're doing a standalone deployment, this is great because you don't have to have a separate environment. But it's not the end of the world if you don't, or if in this particular deployment, we have a remote vCenter. We've got a bunch of invested time and resources in that. We want to move it over. So we could do local here if that's what the customer wants, but we also have the remote option, and that's what we're going to end up selecting here, right?
We are indeed. I'm going to select the remote option, and then it'll ask me for the IP address of my vCenter server. And it knows that I'm going to want to use the inbuilt directory within vCenter. How did it know I wanted that? But it is the only one that's there by default. Of course, you could use other authentication in there as well. Management ESX, management VM ESX. What's this asking us for?
So this should be in the pre-validation spreadsheet for the ESX configurations.
So this is my first, there we go, management VM.
Yes, and so we've collected that before. We're going to take that information and add it into OVIO.
So that's a slightly odd naming for what is actually the ESXi server's management interface.
Okay.
I think Greg was saying some of the naming in here is interesting. And then put usual subnet information, gateway, DNS. And then although the license says evaluation mode expired, we're not actually using the embedded, so it doesn't care about that. It's going to use whatever licensing I've got on my existing vCenter. And you can see now it's gone out and talked to vCenter and populated in that license. That's nice.
It knows that it's there.
And of course, we're building a hyperconverged cluster, so we need to specify a cluster name.
Exactly.
So our data center is called vBrownBag. And where are we today?
In Houston, Texas.
In Houston, Texas. So let's have a cluster called Houston. Seems like a very business-oriented name for a cluster, not a cartoon character, which I like. And we click next on that guy. And look at that, we've found our 3 nodes.
So it found the other 3 nodes out there. We want to select that, yes, we wish to import these nodes into this cluster.
And now we're setting the subnets for each of these functions.
Correct. And so this is also in the installation guide if we had it. If the customer has a very detailed network mapping, they could just use it from there. But also we have it in this pre-validation worksheet, and we can just copy and paste from there. And this is where the pre-work, the discussion in advance really helps save on deployment time and ease. It helps the problems later.
It doesn't like me cutting and pasting into this one, so I'm just checking that I'm putting the right subnet in for each function. And you can see that when I put in the first IP address, it told me what the last one is. So it's important that at deploy time you have consecutives.
Correct, and knowing what it's going to deploy, correct.
And then for the storage network, which is that's that second issue that we had where we actually put it flat because we didn't have a separate network for storage. And the installer has an issue with that. It's not one that's insoluble. There is a support, the support team knew how to resolve the issue, but we decided to actually go with a good practice and isolate out the storage network.
Correct.
All right. Store virtual credentials, but I don't have store virtual yet.
Correct, but it is integrated in the box as we get it, so we can go through, add those credentials, and that way it knows how to log into everything.
But I'm creating the account here. I'm not adding an existing
correct
set of credentials, which is, of course, why I need to confirm my password. And my nice complex password, because it does complain if my password's only 7 characters long. And it'll probably complain if I don't get them the same in both fields. Good, green credentials.
Excellent.
And then some more settings in here. DNS it's picked up off earlier entries. Name for our storage cluster. We're going to leave those defaults. Let's just leave those as the defaults.
So mail setting is kind of interesting. If there is an issue, it can send a from mail and it send it to a certain email address. And this is the configuration step where we enter that. So exactly, sender email if you got an email from HC380. And we send it to the administrator.
Sending it to a distribution list of all of the administrators at vBrownBag.
Excellent.
And again, a nice summary, and when I fat-fingered things and made typos along the way during the dry run, which I'm stunned I didn't do this time, we got reds in here.
Exactly, so if there is a red, this is the summary step. It's pretty cool. We know to go back to that and fix it now before it will go through the install process. But we got it all, we have all the green arrows here, so we are good to go on to the next step. Yes.
And all of those settings are summarized here. And if you're documenting, if you don't feel that your spreadsheet is adequate documentation, you can, of course, screen grab these.
Sure.
Hit the deploy button.
And now it's going to go actually take all that information that we just entered and configure and deploy the 3 nodes in this particular case. So this is no more user interaction or requirements from us at this time. We're going to keep an eye on it as it gets down to 0, but we are good for a little while.
Excellent. So I think, Jeffrey, this is a great time to put in the recorded interview that I did with Bharath Vasudevan, where we talked about where this product fits inside that broad portfolio of products that HPE has. Hi, welcome to the HPE HC380 vBrownBag build day. Try and make that all fit together and flow into a nice diagram. I'm sitting down today with the HPE Product Manager for Hyper Converged, Bharath Vasudevan. Welcome.
Thank you.
And did I get the name right this time?
You got it much closer than the last time.
Excellent. I wanted to start with some context because we're spending today and the live stream event talking about this HC380 that we have in front of us. But everybody knows that HPE has a whole heap more products, and you look after all the hyper-converged, but you also know how things fit in the wider portfolio. Can you just give us some feeling of how HC380 fits within the vast collection of products that HPE brings to market?
Well, so vast collection or robust portfolio. We have things anywhere from the traditional infrastructure, server storage, networking, things that are a little bit more converged, like whether that's blade systems or converged systems. These types of products have really been defined by workload. I need 5,000 mailboxes. What infrastructure do I need? Someone goes and does the sizing, typically based on IOPS, and produces a result. We created this software-defined cloud group to really try to address what's coming next. So a lot of times, workload is a constant theme, right? It has to serve its purpose.
You've always got to be running an application somewhere. You've got to be delivering something to the business out of this.
Absolutely. So at any point in time, it has to solve for that. But what we've noticed, with the rise of the public cloud, there's now this new alternative. How do I optimize for workflow? How do I make my runtime easier? It's not all about unboxing it and getting it up and running, but what's next? You know what we found out? Hyperconverged, everything is virtual.
Yes, absolutely.
And in most of our customers, that is a large chunk of their environment. But there are some workloads, God forbid, that are still run physical.
It seems to be almost heresy to say that there can be a workload outside of a virtual machine, particularly coming from my background with VMware for years. But yet there is no one solution that is right for every problem, and installing operating systems on bare metal is still valid for many use cases.
Oh, and then not only that, but once we start talking about scale and things like that as well, right? There are 4-socket workloads that today aren't addressed in a hyper-converged environment.
Yes.
There's still need for external storage, fiber channel SANs. So to address all of that, we have composable infrastructure. And that's your data center building block.
Right.
Then we've got things like hyperconverged that solve for many of the same software-defined problems, but they're solving it at a different scale. I mean, all of the hyperconverged solutions underpinnings are software-defined storage.
Yes.
Once you start moving down that path, you are going to run into scale, despite what some people might say.
It just depends on the product architecture where you're going to hit those scale limits. Every product has scale limits, no matter the infinite scale that's touted.
Even if you're talking about high-end fiber channel, there is a scale limitation.
Yeah.
So we just find those breakpoints a little bit lower with hyperconverged. But if all of that's fine to a customer, we've got a pretty great architecture to leap forward
their requirements.
Right. So that's really that continuum, whether it's converged, whether it's traditional infrastructure, whether it's composable or hyperconverged. We want to make sure that we've got things that are all addressing workloads, but different architectures are going to address workflow concerns as well.
So we've got solutions that fit the different business requirements. That it isn't a case of one size fits all. We've only got a hammer, so everything's a nail. And I think at some stage we want to really drill into what this composable is, because I think there is a lot of confusion about what it means, and particularly since it sounds like compostable, and although things are recyclable in the packaging, it's a very different thing. And I think we will probably, and we'll do a little chat on that today as well, and see some ideas of what composable is and how it's different. One of the things we haven't hit is product names that fit the different areas. So the composable infrastructure sits in the Synergy branding, doesn't it?
Correct.
When you're having the discussion with your HPE rep about which products they're talking about. So Synergy is the composable infrastructure. We're familiar with things like the 3PAR we have behind us as being the standalone storage in the mid-range, and the DL series of servers to be the compute that you usually pair with them if you're x86, HC380 for some of the hyperconverged. And we'll talk about the SimpliVity product in another video, but that sits in the hyperconverged as sort of an emerging piece now that the acquisitions occurred. What other product sets have I not mentioned that are in this sort of continuum of products?
Well, I would say the one piece that you haven't touched on is really HPE OneView. So it's an area where we made an immense investment, and really think of that as the automation and orchestration glue. So when we do talk about things like 3PAR and composable infrastructure, a lot of these are built on a similar API set. Once you do that, there's a lot of commonality that you can draw together. So yes, while things like composable infrastructure will work with anybody's storage, there are better together things that we've built in with things like 3PAR, with things like Store Virtual VSA, because of the presence of OneView. So it's definitely one of those critical pieces that we've frankly made a lot of investment in that you don't typically see from a hardware manufacturer.
Yeah, and I think that's yet another area that will be interesting to dig into is around OneView, because I certainly don't know enough about it because I haven't spent enough hands-on time with customers on it. I think we've covered off this sort of architectural, where does HC380 fit in the product set, and so thank you, Barath, for joining me on this this segment, and stay tuned for more of the HC380 build day here at HPE.
Great, thanks so much.
So, lots of good information there about positioning of the HC380, but we haven't yet finished the this deploy. But
Excellent.
We did get Greg Park did bring up a point that you wanted to.
So no, thanks, Greg. Definitely. This is the OVIO installation process, and in that first step, one of the first steps, we selected 3 nodes. But we do support a 2-node configuration, so the issue comes up of how do you decide for a failover manager or a quorum witness? And so if you just had 2 nodes in the discovery, you just selected 2, there'd be another field that popped up during the installation process where you could enter the information about that quorum witness should one of the nodes fail in a 2-node cluster. In this particular case, we have the 3-node, so we were good. But it is something that that you should be aware of if you ever are installing a 2-node system somewhere.
And Greg and I recorded a video yesterday that we'll play a little later that includes some considerations about that, and me learning that NFS is supported as a quorum for this.
That's right.
Which is pretty cool.
We can watch that here shortly.
So as you can see in the install, progress has progressed.
Yep.
And the countdown is counting down. And this is the moment of truth, is really these last 2 seconds here where we get the sinking feeling that it's not going to work. Yet yesterday, or the day before when it finally did, it sat like this for a little while, and then suddenly it was all configured.
And it went past.
So yes, we now have what Greg refers to as metric seconds. They move at a different speed.
I think it's Jupiter that
Jupiter seconds?
that goes a little bit slower in their
Yeah.
seconds. So
Yeah, that has seconds that seem to go on for an eternity. So we're watching carefully here. Jeff has all of his fingers crossed, and probably his toes as well. All 6 of them crossed.
all 72.
Dun, 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 dun. Suspense is killing me. You know, I didn't think that Barath was going to be the person who didn't speak long enough to fill the gap, because it would have been so much more pleasant if this phase had happened during Barath's video and we didn't have to fill. And
Exactly.
hope that it behaves now.
We'll give it some more time here, and maybe we could look
Well, I
into
know
something
that
else.
at this phase, vCenter knows about a little bit, so I was going to kick over to vCenter. And we can see our Houston cluster that was created by the wizard, and we've got our ESX servers in there that are the HC380 nodes, and we've got the SV VSA, the still virtual storage appliance. That's an interesting thing. But I think just as I switched, nope, it didn't go just as I switched. Just looks like it was switching across to the complete. So we do have our cluster with our servers in here, and they're all sitting there being servers.
Yep.
But I'm starting to feel a little uncomfortable at this moment. Let's take a look at the log files that the installer is creating as it runs. As our log files, and actually what I should have is a command prompt, a PowerShell command prompt. There we go, and we do a get content, and it was the main log. Main.log with a wait switch, which is the equivalent of a tail minus F, and so it's now showing us what's going on. And it does look like we have an issue. We have a remote server returned an error 500 internal server error. Talking to OVC for vCenter.
Can we check the gateways? We're getting a lot of comments about that, and yeah, possibly remove the second gateway entry from VSA Ethernet 0.
Sure. So on.
And thank you for the comments.
On which machine are we looking at that? That's on this OV for OVIO machine, isn't it? It's coming in here, and the network configuration in here. No, we only have the single network interface on here, so it was actually on one of the ESX servers. OVIO machine. Okay, thanks, Greg. The networking and sharing. There we go, networking and sharing. A little unresponsive, so the machine is a little busy. And that was the symptom we saw as well before when we had duplicate gateways. And we go into the adapter settings, and it was this VSA ETH0 that we wanted the properties for. And we're just going to take this gateway out completely.
Okay, so we'll take that out and give it some time.
Because we have on this network here, we have the same gateway. And that was our issue, that Windows doesn't like having two network interfaces with a gateway because you're only supposed to have one default route in the TCP stack, and we've put two in here.
Okay.
So this is the known support issue that when you strike this one,
so this is due to us using a flat network. This is not necessarily something we see in a real deployment.
Yeah, I'd like to hear a definitive answer from Greg, who's gone out and done more deployments in production environments than just here.
Gotcha.
Because yeah, this does appear to be flat, but we shouldn't be on a flat network. Where are we going? That was last message in there was a minute or two ago.
So Greg did come back and say correct. Yep.
That's just at the end of that. So our REST calls are still showing us a fail on here. So I'm going to see if it may take a little while.
Yes, and since typically networks have separate VLANs and routes for those networks, we need a gateway for each NIC then.
We don't have to restart that then, or no?
We believe that it should resolve itself in time. The other thing I was going to do was actually get that URL that it's trying to access and open it up with a web browser, because it says this URL here and that log file is the one that it's not getting a response from, and I want to get hold of that URL and see if a web browser on this machine will now show it up. So it's making a call across to this URL here. I'm going to copy that one and then get me some Internet Explorer. And see if Internet Explorer will get me a response.
Okay.
if Internet Explorer will load for me. There we go. The wonderful joys of Windows 2012 Server and Internet Explorer. I can actually test the URL from a different machine, but the important place for this URL to load is from here. There we go, there's the URL we want to hit.
So it's important at this point to leave OVIO up and running. If we were to close it, we'd have to go through a reset process. So we're just going to leave that up and running.
Leave this and
very important step, yes.
But eventually, let me see, it's taking a while to load there. Let me just, nope, what do we got? It's still taking its time to load. Internet Explorer is still coming along. Let me try that. There we go, now it's trying to load it off the OV for VC machine. Or not. So what I'm expecting to see is a HTTPS connection to that OV for VC, and the URL should return me this simple piece of text here.
Okay.
And it does appear that OV for VC is responding, albeit rather more slowly on the OVIO machine. So definitely we're getting that same return. However, we still haven't seen that complete up. So Greg, any more suggestions for us as we work through this one? Because we're still seeing those same REST calls being made by the OVIO. Any more thoughts?
So he's, let me bring that a little closer so you can see it. Did you remove the VSA cluster from remote OV for VC?
So the OV for VC is a fresh install. So I completely uninstalled OV for VC previously after we did our dry run.
Okay.
So it's not that there's because I reused the same identifiers for everything.
Okay.
It's not that there's a legacy hangover from the dry run.
Okay. Okay.
And the use of the remote vCenter is part of the trigger to this. So we've got another suggestion from Greg to open up a different URL. And what port was it on? We're on port 501. And it was UI_MGMTJSP login.jsp. So connecting on a different port onto our 1V for vCenter. And we have the storage administrator portal here. And if I remember rightly, that one accepts the local credentials for the administrator on the machine. Maybe not. Maybe it was a different one that used that. So we're just...
Can you send him the error message in the PowerShell?
So the PowerShell window
vCenter credentials is what support said.
Okay. So what Greg's not seeing is the
Hard to
error
read on the
message here.
screen, so we're going to get it to the support personnel. He's got several people in this PDO willing to help out, and
Pull a
thank you.
bunch of that. And I'm just thinking how I can send this to you.
Can you email it to me? I can get it to Greg. Or you can email it to Greg.
I can zoom in the screen.
Can you just cut to the camera shot so that my remote desktop with my email in it doesn't come up in the stream? Thank you.
While he's doing that, if you have any suggestions or ideas, you can always. And everybody's got a oh, my camera's off. Everybody's got a voice in this whole thing, so you can always go onto the chat and make some suggestions. Help us out. We'll give you a nice shot of the actual 380, which we have back there as we wait.
And I think while we're waiting for an escalation response, why don't we actually get some of Greg on the screen? So we do the recorded video where we interviewed Greg called Real Deploy. And that's probably more interesting than listening to us going back and forth with support to just hear from Greg, particularly since he's the guy that we're asking for support information. So we did some interviews with him yesterday, and that Real Deploy one I think is a good one to do now.
Here we go.
Welcome back to the vBrownBag build day here with the HC380 Hyper Converged platform at HPE Enterprise. I'm joined by Greg Park. Thanks for joining me again for this video, Greg. I wanted to talk a little bit about what your experience has been of these things being deployed actually out with real customers, because it's all very well having product management and tech marketing engineers talking about that there are use cases for it where it's in particular silos and solving problems, and that there's this wonderful vision of synergy as another tool, and there's more legacy architectures. But real customers are out there solving their real problems, and you're going out there helping them. So can you give us some insights on where you've seen these HC380 actually deployed with customers?
One example is a customer who puts these in their processing plants. They have several 2-node solutions out across processing plants, 10 to 11 different plants, and they roll these up. They're using those to collect all that data there, and then they can pull it back into their main data center to look at what's going on.
So they do local data capture in a manufacturing plant onto here, some processing.
Some processing and then bring it back
One of the things I've been writing about is the value density of information, and that you want to send back value dense information, and the stuff that's not very dense in value you want to process here before you start pushing it around. So
absolutely.
That's one of the use cases.
Type processing, right?
Edge processing.
So that's been a pretty neat solution they've been putting out. I see a lot of not hardened areas, but difficult areas around West Texas and places like that where they want to put these out because there's no real support staff out there, not a whole lot to do. So almost like a robo, even though some big companies, it's their branch offices out there around the country, and they want to put this out again. Most of it is data processing there as well, to collect a lot of data, bring it in. A couple of big 10-node clusters where they're doing VDI, putting 100 plus users, using the capabilities of the NVIDIA card and some of the VDI session capabilities they put on here. Neat to see their end users are happy because the test was to watch a bunch of cartoons, so we had a good time doing the end user test as well. So
it's good to see customers who test based on a business use case.
Business use case, watch cartoons at their end users. So made me happy. I also see some people trying to just migrate small workloads, going standard system, no VDI, nothing, just lots of drives, and move even small SQL workloads over and do things like that to get it off some legacy stuff. They're either retiring, even that hardware is getting stressed. It's a pretty powerful box. You can run quite a bit in here.
So if you're replacing general purpose virtualization on hardware that's maybe 5 years old, there's no way it's going to form anything but better when you bring it onto a newer piece of hardware like this.
It gives you that option of moving some of those things off, helping you retire some of that older stuff, and simplify your day-to-day work. As I keep saying, let's make our data center smaller, simpler, easily. So.
One of the features of HC380 that we talk about a lot in the marketing is the VM vending machine. So the ability to devolve the ability to just deploy virtual machines down to the business owner of the virtual machine without necessarily involving the IT people. How much do you see that adopted versus them continuing to use their legacy processes of the IT department, gets a ticket, creates a virtual machine, returns the ticket?
So I see actually a lot of people using this vending machine capability, and the processing plan I was talking about earlier, they allow their admins out there to create a few VMs. They're templatized and they sit in the screen. Will probably show where you have your t-shirt sizes. They have those predefined, so I can roll that out for a short amount of time and use it. And at the same time, I can administer the box, and the number of tickets is smaller because I'm looking at that management screen. I can tell what's really going on. So when I do call my IT staff, I can minimize the amount of time they need to debug it.
So you feel like this gives a lot more ownership of the platform too, or at least the consumption of it. The
consumption of it from day to day. For me, if I'm out of the factory, you could push a workload to me, and now I can just call you when I have real bad problems. On the other side, the integration we have with VMware, I see our customers really like that. The fact they can see everything and drill all the way down to the system from there as well helps them out. So with that one view for vCenter plugin, they like the ability from an administrator point of view, if I call up, say I'm having a problem, you can get down to it without having to jump to other screens, jump out. It's a
so me as being a long-term VCP, I can use the vSphere client and go and look at things and make changes and provision virtual machines. That's as I was looking at it today, I had virtual machines that I was managing through vCenter, but they all showed up in the self-service portal showed the same, and it came back in the other direction as well. When I produced a virtual machine through the self-service, it looked like a sensible VM in vSphere as well. It didn't have a GUID as the virtual machine name or anything like that.
You can push VMs down to me also, and that interface lets me create LDAP integration so that at the same time I can only be a read-only user of that. So you can have full control. Or I can be an admin, I can roll out VMs. In this case, I go to my little VM vending page, and you can define the VMs ahead of time. And my t-shirt size is there, I can roll those out. So I have some control out on my factory, or if I'm out in an oil field or something.
All right, well, we were going to ask you about the weird and wonderful places that we've seen the HC380, but we're discussing off camera, and it sounds like these things go pedestrian places. They just go and do work and run this weird thing called production that isn't necessarily quite so
I've been trying to work a deal to get down to Puerto Rico to do an install or do something on a cruise ship. Have not had that happen yet. So most of the time it's a data center like this.
Grand Cayman or anything?
Not Cayman. I'd like to go down to Grand Cayman to see my money. It'd be neat, but it's, no, I don't, nothing really unique. So
thank you, Greg. This has been vBrownBag Build Day for HPE Enterprise HC380. So we are still having fun.
Right.
Trying to resolve out the issue. It appears that it's not the duplicate gateway on the OVIO machine.
But it was something
at
to
least
check.
Removing that has not resolved our issue.
And so he said, so we've been talking with Greg. He says in the storage admin portal, let's add the system manually. Click the add system.
So this is the URL that Greg sent us before. I logged in with the vCenter credentials because we're adding awareness of the storage system into vCenter. So hit the add button.
Select
I guess
store
we're going to be a store virtual. So one of the storage
and
nodes.
put the second IP address of the storage network. The idea is just to see if we can see the VSA.
Right. So our storage network is here. The second one is that guy. 172.17.199.12. Username is the one that I set during the install of administrator.
Let's give that a shot.
And at this stage, we have seen in the vSphere client that the VSA virtual machines are running. And now we are adding awareness of those virtual machines to OpenView for vCenter.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's really nice to have a support team that we can call on that can escalate across.
Exactly.
So the username administrator was not found. So Greg, what's our default VSA username and password? We almost need to bring Greg out, but he's probably deeply engrossed in tech documentation. Okay, so his suggestion was to, on the OV for VC machine, restart the service that is OpenView for vCenter. Because what we're seeing in the event log is that the call to that URL is returning a 500, an HTTP 500, which is internal server error message. So it may well be that we take the Windows approach to resolving it and just restart that service. So I'm back on the OV for VC, and what's our service name in here? Is it OV, something beginning with O, or is it an HP service name? Just searching through, hoping that it jumps out at me, but at this point I'm probably going to be unable to even see it. Let's try looking at it as a service list.
Can we double check the firewall is off? I believe we checked it earlier, but just something to double check.
Well, we know it's off because we got a response from the service on 3501.
Okay.
So we know we can get to the service. There we go. HP OneView for vCenter, and I'm expecting that everything will be dependent on the database. So we stop all of the vCenter for OneView. And then I changed the sort order to whether they're running or not. Yeah, back here, and we start HP for vCenter server module. So we better stop the storage module. And then I'll stop the UI manager as well to make sure we get all of the HP for OneView for vCenter. Now we'll start some things up again. So what we're hoping is that by restarting these Windows services, the web services will start responding correctly, and then the instant on is just going to proceed away.
I'd like to do a shout out to Thomas Green, who's basically saying, loving the setup. Great to see what really happens in real time. And that is exactly why we are doing this, so you can see what's happening in real time, so you know what to deal with in this case. And I'm kind of glad that this stopped where it was, because that was the problems we were having a couple nights ago. And we know that if you're setting this up, you'll have that same, you might come into that same problem, and here's some ideas to get you through that. But it's also about teamwork, and that's a big key right there. They have somebody on the speed dial or somebody with you to help you work through all just the little kinks, so you don't go insane.
So we've now restarted all of the visible HP one view for vCenter services here on the OV for VC machine, and then back on OVIO. And by the way, hi Thomas.
Hello.
Thomas and I were together at an event in Austin, not far down the road from here, not terribly long ago. And so trying to add that store virtual again to see. Oh, and my session's gone away, of course, because I restarted the services. So I need to go back.
We've got another. Go ahead, but got another comment here. Can we ping the VSA from the OVIO node?
Can we ping the VSA? So is the routing behaving between them? So ping 172 and there we go, 17. Remember my subnets. 17.199.12 is the second IP address. And yep, we have connectivity, so that's let's also do, no, let's not also do, OVIO can reach the storage subnet, and that is going through the router that we configured in order to have a separate storage subnet. So that piece is behaving correctly.
Okay. But it's something to check, and that's good.
And then I'm trimming back down to go back to the original login because my session here has gone away. There we go. And what was the end of that URL that's on that 501 port that we originally had? Keep going up, so it was above this. Keep going up because that was me sending it. No, keep going up. It was this one here. There we go. Login.jsp, that should have been easy to remember. There we go. Okay, what am I typing wrong? UI_management. JSP login.jsp.
We need to go back to that again? That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, because it opened up before, it should open up now. 3501 UI_mgmtjsp login.jsp.
Another shout out to Anthony Hook, who commented basically saying that he loves the reality of this, and it's something that might happen in the field. And then just another one coming from Ken Nalborn. So appreciate the reality of this because it's a good number of my deployments get stuck on on similar issues. So always nice to know that it can happen here too.
Yeah, and that's the joy of doing a live stream of deploying real infrastructure is that you get real issues with it. And it's definitely a process to go through those real issues.
Right.
I think I'm going to do the real Microsoft solution to problems with a Windows server and just restart the OV for VC machine.
Okay.
Because I think my start order of the services has not necessarily been the one they wanted. And so we'll just do a restart. Because then we can get back to that UI where we could add the storage system, and it may well be that as soon as that restart completes, we'll kick back in because
give it a shot,
those requests are still coming through. We're still seeing ongoing. You see the log here is still doing those requests. In fact, we're now seeing some 404 errors, which is a page not found, which I think is a result of my restarting those services in the wrong order.
Okay, okay.
So I think that Walter Saloto Sanchez saw Greg's little mention about being able to go to Costa Rica, and decided to say hello from Costa Rica. He's loving the stream, so thank you very much, Walter, for being on the stream here.
And within vBrownBag, we have a Latin American edition of the vBrownBag podcast, and so we have listenership in Costa Rica. There are probably now friends for Greg to go and visit in Costa Rica when he has the installs. And Larry Gonzalez, one of the vBrownBag guys, is my supplier of Costa Rican coffee. He fills me up with Costa Rican coffee when I get to VMworld.
Nice. So if there's anybody that's part of a cruise ship that would like to comment, I'm pretty sure that Greg would really enjoy that. So feel free to go over to the YouTube channel and chat on the channel there. Let us know how you're watching, where you're watching, if you're watching from mobile, if you're watching from desktop, and be a part of the conversation, because this is the part where lots of things get typed in, so a little bit less speaking happens.
Yeah, we're not in our prepared speeches as we try and resolve these things. As you wouldn't be if it was you resolving these same issues. You'd be wanting your management to leave you alone and get on with things. But keep things in. There we go. We got our one view for vCenter portal is now up.
So Greg is on the phone with several people, so that's great. That's the support network, and he's got another request when we get to a break here. Look into this particular file.
Mm-hmm. We'll have a look in there in just a moment as I log back into the portal. So one view for vCenter is still initializing at this point, so that makes it a good time to go and have a look at that that file. So we're in store virtual. Where were we? Okay, one view for vCenter. So we're back across on our OVVC machine. I don't want to connect again. I want to use my... Oh, I've just restarted it, so I do need to connect again. Okay. So Greg says to retry adding VSA in here. .172, 17, 199, 12. Administrator. Complex password. And that was supposed to be near instantaneous. Now, Greg, I'm entering the password that I set as part of the instant on for the storage system, so the administrator password that I set in the deploy wizard. And it says administrator, the account that I created is not the right one for adding it. While we're doing that, I'll look for this JBoss that is part of one view for vCenter. So there's some stuff in here that Greg wants me to look at as well as adding over here in the interface. Okay. So I think this is, Greg says the CMC password that I set, so I set the administrator password as part of that wizard back here in the credentials page. That's the password that I'm typing to add in here, and so that suggests to me that that there is something up at that point.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I remember as being an oddity for the CMC is that it is case sensitive on user IDs as well as passwords. So I think I put a capital A for administrator, just as a reflex, but I'll try it with a lowercase a once it errors out on this one.
Something else we got, can we get the logs off the OVIO box?
Yes, yes we can. So we're going to go find the logs were in...
We're going to double check the CMC on the OVIO box.
Go back over here and then C drive. Now I'm getting lost about where I've just created that folder because it's there. It should be in here. There we go. There it is. Then I can come back down to that folder and I can there.
You're going to send those to me?
Yeah, stick them up on my Dropbox folder and then email them to you when it syncs. And while it's syncing, I'll try administrator with a lowercase a. Can you switch out of my desktop for a minute, Greg? Jeff? Hey, you? Thanks.
Secret word,
Beelzebub is the secret word. Oh, of course it doesn't help that I have synced I have paused sync on Dropbox. Yeah, the only time you should mute it is if you leave the room to go to the restroom.
This is where you can go get a cup of coffee or use the restroom if you need to.
So I think while we're continuing to troubleshoot, it's probably a good time to play another of our pre-recorded segments, Jeff. And how about we do the one where I was reflecting yesterday afternoon on the challenges we had as we ran through. I think it's fairly appropriate,
yeah,
given that we're hitting
totally
another of those challenges.
Totally agree. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Alistair Cook, and this is part of the HPE vBrownBag build day for the Hyperconverged 380 platform. We're the night before the actual live event, and so we've just spent the last 2 days doing a dry run and recording some interview content, and it was a good time to review that dry run. You know, this is a real IT project. This is trying to do in half a day what you'd normally do over the course of a week, deploying a whole new infrastructure for a customer. And so it's challenging to make sure that we show a good process during the build day and show something that's realistic, but that we don't delay for 4 hours as we have an escalation that has to go through the support team and show those problems. We need to show the resolution of those problems. We definitely don't want to hide that it is a normal IT product, and there are problems as you deploy into a complex production environment. But we also don't want you to have to wait for it, and so this is why we go through the dry run, and we expect to expose some faults in the dry run. And we learned quite a bit. We learned some things around the lab environment I bought. Was not necessarily a good representation of production. Particularly, we hadn't isolated out the storage network from the management and the virtual machine network, and one of the things we had to do to make the HC380 installer run nicely was to actually separate those out and put a router between the storage network and the management network, which is absolutely a best practice, but something you often ignore doing in a lab because it takes a lot more effort, or a little more effort. So we've now put that in place, and we're much more production-like as we go through this, and I think that's a really important thing that we'll be doing as we go onwards, is making the customer environment that we bring along. We also learned a little bit more of the reminder that firewalls are going to cause you problems, particularly if you forget that they're turned on. So one of the challenges we had was that the Windows firewall and an installer that didn't auto-configure it. And it took us a few cycles round to work out that that was the cause of our problem. And you know, it's a typical IT issue that the install takes a little while to run and the uninstall takes a little while to run, and you're never quite sure unless you do an uninstall and a restart that you've got a clean install this time around. So we had the usual IT project challenges. You're not going to see as much evidence of them tomorrow in the live stream, but we'll still talk about them. I think it's important to highlight those things and highlight how they really mean that you need to plan for your environment and you need to plan for the deployment of new technology. Whereas for the dry run, we didn't do terribly much planning. We're looking really good for the actual build day tomorrow. I'm really comfortable that we're going to have a good experience of deploying the HC380 in the environment now that we've planned through and filled out all the numbers in the spreadsheet. It should be really fun. Doing that live production is still a little stressful, but at least tonight we finished at 5 o'clock instead of around midnight last night that we finished up as we went through, particularly because the place that we were getting a recurrent problem in the deploy of the wizard, it got to a point where the guys at HPE had to do the system reset, so they had to restore to factory condition the 3-node cluster that we have. And you can imagine that that's not a 2-minute process. It's not a 4-hour process, happily. It's under an hour to restore that 3-node cluster to a factory condition. But when you have to do it 3 times in the evening, that chews up quite a lot of time, and it's so that we get a nice, clean, factory fresh system to build on tomorrow. So I think we're going to have a really good day tomorrow. We should have lots to learn. We've got some really interesting content already recorded in the pre-recorded segments that we'll play whenever there's some wait time. So during the actual live time, you won't have to wait for we're going to have some things to view during that time. And of course, everything will be available on YouTube pretty soon afterwards. So do follow us on Twitter and like our Facebook page to see what's going on with us, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel and get all of the great vBrownBag content that we produce. We will have an excellent time.
There you go.
Well, if you're just joining us, we're having an interesting day here at the HC380 build day with vBrownBag. If you are with us on Facebook, the stream on Facebook seems to not be quite as nice as we'd like. You may wish to head on across to the YouTube event. So hit YouTube and find the vBrownBag channel on there, and you'll be able to find our live event. We have around 60 people watching us along and laughing as we type things wrong, and hopefully feeling very relatable in the troubleshooting activities we're doing. So at this stage, we're not making a lot of progress. I'm trying now to launch the CMC, which is the central management console for the store virtual left-hand side. And this RDP connection into this machine doesn't seem to like to launch the CMC very well.
Let's see if we can get the cluster data center with the OVIO box logs.
Okay, there's a cluster data center with logs on the OVIO box. So whereabouts is that folder? Logs? How about we go to C drive and look for cluster underscore data center. Gotta remember whether I'm doing US or New Zealand spelling. And I get confused because I have to switch backwards and forwards.
You have to deal with both of them. That's depending where you are. You spell it accordingly.
Indeed, and I know when I'm writing, that's one of the things my editors have to correct is get it the right way around. Because of course for okay. So, and CMC is just coming up. So I'm going to log into that and make sure that the credentials that I'm using are correct for the CMC. So this is the credentials that I set during the install wizard for the HC380 where on that credentials tab. And this is also the credentials that I should be able to use to add the store virtual cluster into OV for vCenter. And so I'm successfully logging on with the credentials. My credentials are correct.
Okay.
So it's not that I've fat-fingered anywhere along the way that was not recoverable.
Gotcha, but we checked it that way. We know.
Still waiting for logon. No, logon is completed. So yeah, I'm still. We have a store virtual cluster here that is up, operational. So at least that bit is good to see that we've had that piece of progress. And then we're looking now for some more logs. And here's the cluster logs. So these were the other logs that Greg wanted a copy of those as well.
What's that?
I'm sending through to Greg a copy of these.
Speaking of which, Larry Gonzalez says hi, your coffee provider.
Hey Larry, I'll see you at VMworld. Feels really nice to know that my friends are out there watching and are going to make fun of me next time they see me for this one.
So we got another suggestion as well. Try to add the cluster through the storage portal, OV for VC machine, and then use VIP.
That's what I'm doing.
Also do some shout outs to Philip Sellers. Your wife, you can say hi to your wife if you want to.
Oh, my wife?
Your wife, yeah.
Oh, hi Tracy. Good morning. Hope you slept well last night. Time in New Zealand is going to be about 6 o'clock in the morning, so it's early.
Yeah, he's a time traveler, by the way. Anyway, Anthony Hook, thanks for coming on.
VIP is the second IP, so it may already be.
Rosa Maria, thank you for coming on. And is that your daughter?
Rosa Maria? No.
No. Elish?
Eilish. Eilish. That's my 20-year-old who's studying nursing at the moment.
There you go. So thank you for coming on to the feed. And then Ernesto is on, and he's saying, good job. Good job, guys. Not making fun of you at all. I know that.
Thanks, Ernesto, and I hope it's not too cold up where you are.
Yeah, he's definitely been in this situation a few times.
I think a lot of people who are watching along have seen this go on before.
We got one more comment here.
So in VSA cluster, where am I going? And the iSCSI tab. So the cluster is on .12, so we're definitely using the right IP address for the cluster.
Okay.
So here on the CMC, we've got the cluster IP, and the credentials that I've used are definitely correct. So let's come back in here and give it one more.
Can we click on cluster in the iSCSI tab?
Yeah, so that's this one here. So in the iSCSI, this is the virtual IP.
Okay, did you get what you needed, Greg?
That confirms that it is what he asked us to hit, which was the second IP address in our range, 11 being the first one.
Okay.
So we're confirming up that this should have a capital A for administrator. It should be. And we're going to go with the definition of insanity, which is trying the same thing again and expecting a different result.
Let's maybe see if we can ping it from OV for VC.
Okay. So we'll go back to the OV for VC machine and drop into a command prompt and ping 172.17.199.12, which is the store virtual cluster virtual IP address.
Can we ping it from another, from the...
Oh, here it is. So we haven't got it from our OV for VC.
So this is from the OV, is this from OV for VC or OVIO?
OV for VC cannot ping the cluster. So let me, that probably means that I haven't got a route added to it, that I need to add a static route to it. In fact, that's what it is. So when we're troubleshooting this, I added a route to my OV for VC machine.
Okay.
But I did not put a P switch for persistent on the end of the route add command.
Okay.
So
it's all your fault.
Of course it's all my fault.
Now it is time to make fun.
All right, okay, Ernesto, it's now time to put the jokes into the chat there. So I will be relaying those as they come in. Casper 142, welcome to the chat. It's kind of hard to explain where we were, but it looks like we now have the.
All right, the route is back in place.
85% of the problem is user related, and
operator error. Striking the operator to continue.
There you go.
So now we have the ping successful. So now OVIO can actually talk to the storage node. You know what? We should go back and see if instant on is well, look at that. It says we have a cluster.
All right.
Yay!
Only an hour spent working out that I had not put a persistent route in.
But we got some things to check in the meantime if anybody else were to encounter a similar error.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that at the point that we ran the validation, there was nothing actually on the storage network. We hadn't configured the VSAs to be on the storage network, so we couldn't check that there was a route to it.
Okay.
So the validation tool can't check at that point. Great. Relief. Everybody may breathe again.
As Tom Green goes, it's a picnic. Problem in chair, not in computer.
Yes, or PEBCAC, problem between keyboard and chair. All right, so now we have an HC380 VSA, and once again, it's all about the preparation.
At least it's not midnight. That's the important.
It is not midnight, and we haven't lost the audience because we've been too dull as we got too focused on the problem. Because I know as we were working through this the other night, Jeff got a little bored with hanging around.
It wasn't that I was getting bored; it was that I was running out of things to do, and without having some other stuff that I needed.
Now wait, it says there's some things going on with the management UI will start automatically.
Yes. So the next thing that we're going to do is hit the finish button on here, and it pops a new dialog. Is my recollection of this. So let's hit this finish button, which should have happened after that 9 minutes and 2 countdown when Bharath was talking about where the HC380 fits inside the entire framework of the portfolio of VMware's, hang on, where are we today? Within the entire portfolio of HPE's products. So about a minute after Bharath finished talking, that's where we're taking off from now. Finish button, and I've got to hide away all of the bits that I've added so they don't get in the way of the UI. And my recollection was that it was supposed to pop up and ask for some more credentials. I wonder if that's still in process in the background. So you can see the logs say it's finalized. Okay, so yeah, so my recollection of last time we did this is the point where it says what IP address should I use for the HC380 management interface and those components.
We're checking with them. Let's just wait.
Because the other phase of this, and bear in mind I've only done this once, and unfortunately both Greg and Richard were away attending to clients and meetings and weren't able to explain to me, well, here it is, hooray, it's turned up.
Excellent. So
this is what we were waiting for. So some indeterminate time after we click finish, the PowerShell stuff goes on in the background, does some more testing and checking, and then pops this interface.
So it took a little time while some things were migrating, but it did pop up.
And so now we're going to configure the management interfaces that we're actually going to access.
Exactly. So once that's stopped, we're going to put this in and we're going to configure that user interface.
Right. Now, HC380, we're going to set the administrator password. Use my standard complex password and say, yes, I agree to those terms and conditions. Now we're setting the IP address for that management portal that we're using, and this is outside of the range of IPs that we previously set, but if I remember rightly,
good to check.
We have, I think this was the one that I decided wasn't in the spreadsheet yet, was that there wasn't yet an identifier of the, oh, here it is. So we have a one view for vCenter management IP address. But I can't use that one because I've used that IP address for the vCenter server, so I'm going to use .8 on my management subnet. I'm glad I understand this. And the same gateway. vCenter. So this is the credentials that the simplified user interface is going to use to access vCenter. Great. For production use, I'd highly recommend a dedicated account for this. I'm just going to use the built-in administrator at vSphere.local account. But remember, when I am manually interacting with vCenter, I'm going to use the VI admin account. So anything that we see done as administrator at vSphere.local is going to be the HC380 component. And then we hit submit on this one.
Okay.
I think I've hit submit on this one. There it is. Failed to authenticate with vCenter. Fat-fingered something.
Dan Robinson was talking about post-Alveo needing two IPs. One view, UI, and VM running machine.
Indeed, there will be two different IPs in use for this. And that's what we see as a couple of things. One of the things is this virtual machine that I've RDP'd into, the randomly selected seed node from the three that we've got. This virtual machine will persist. The other two nodes had another copy of this because they're all the same.
Right.
But those VMs are not actually registered up in vCenter anymore. We'll only see this one registered in vCenter. Now this is the phase where it goes off and does stuff.
And this is going to take a while,
and
but it is doing things, so we're just going to let it sit.
And it takes about this long. It takes about this long. However many minutes this long is. Your mileage will vary. I measured it yesterday at taking somewhere around 15 minutes, and there is almost no progress visible. So this is a great time for us to play another of our pre-recorded videos. This is the second one that we did with Greg, where we're looking at the HC380 custom uses. So it's a discussion around where you're seeing HC380 being deployed out for real production.
Okay.
And because we've been sitting here in the video with you for a couple of hours, we're going to grab something to eat while this video is playing for about 9 minutes. Welcome back to the vBrownBag HC380 build day here at HPE in Houston. Welcome again, Bharath. Bharath is the product manager for Hyperconverged here at HPE. And I thought we'd take a little while to talk about the customer uses that you see the HC380 going into. Just thinking about the high-level ideas, because he's product manager and we don't really want to get too deep into the technical stuff.
Which we could if you wanted to.
But let's have a talk a little bit around where you see the HC380 being deployed. I'm interested that the deployment guide talks about 3 primary scenarios of general purpose virtualization, VDI, and cloud system. Whether you see that mirrored in what customers are doing, and in particular that catch-all of general purpose virtualization. Sure. Are there use cases that you see the HC380 going into?
Yeah, I think it's probably easiest to just knock out VDI. I think one of our bigger competitors really established Hyperconverged for VDI. And frankly, it makes a lot of sense given how VDI scales very linearly, the same way typically 2-socket servers can scale linearly.
Yeah, and particularly for VDI, I love the way that there isn't a single point of consolidation of all of the performance requirements, the way there is with a monolithic storage array attached to VDI,
Sure.
where you hit a brick wall that kills every user's performance when
being
when
distributed works out in this case.
Yeah.
Now, with general purpose virtualization, this is where we see the lion's share of people looking at a hyperconverged environment. Where we started off really focusing on the user environment outside of vCenter. One of the common themes we run into is customers have VM admins or vAdmins. And these are relatively well-paid folks. And they complain to us because some of their highest priced, best employees are spending so much of their time doing very pedestrian tasks, which they would love to delegate to somebody more junior, but they're very reluctant to turn over the keys to vCenter. So we created this hyper-converged operating environment that really looks to allow more people to start doing those pedestrian tasks without having to run in vCenter.
Right.
And that's really what we call VM vending. Right? It's how do I take the top 5 things, spinning up VMs, tearing down VMs, creating images, all of the tasks that consume a VM admin's life, and figure out how to democratize that. That's the use case that we're going after.
Right. So to free up the high-value, high-skilled engineers to do the thing that is actually high value to business.
That's right.
And then push down the more routine, help desk-driven activities down to an engineer who's not necessarily as deeply skilled and is therefore not so expensive.
Well, and you asked the question too, what are customers running? So we look at things like a DevOps environment. The first round of customers that went through this just went directly to the cloud. They're like, you know what, that's going to be our silo. We're going to go run it in the public cloud.
And that was the only place that you could run a DevOps environment 5 years ago.
Right. Now what happened was everyone looked at the entry point of the cloud and loved it.
It's a great place to start, and it's a great place to fail.
Now, the only problem, though, is when, they developed something and then people started using it, and then it became production and people started accessing it.
What, dev systems become production without planning and operations involvement?
Occasionally that's been known to happen. And when that happened, the cost profile completely went upside down.
So public cloud is a very expensive place to succeed.
That's right. It's a great place to try and fail.
Yes.
So then they came to us and they said, what can you do for this? And they said, well, just what's wrong with today, the way it runs? And I said, well, our service request manager, our SLAs to deliver VMs, it's great when someone's deploying like an Exchange system for 3 years, but it fails miserably when somebody is requesting a VM every half hour, which is indicative of this type of continuous development environment.
Absolutely. And then disposing of those VMs a day later as well, which again is, if you don't dispose of the VMs, you get a serious problem with sprawl.
Which, by the way, is still less painful than doing it in the public cloud.
Oh, yeah, public cloud sprawl, you're paying those
that meter keeps running.
Every hour you're paying for that VM.
So, going back to this situation, they said, well, what can you do to help us? Because right now, we have an SLA between 3 hours and 3 days to go deliver that bare metal VM. And our developers aren't going to wait. I mean, my kids, when they want to watch cartoons, they reach into my phone and 30 seconds later they're watching something.
Yeah.
This is the kind of environment, this is what the workplace is turning into.
It's the speed of fulfillment.
Yeah. Now, instant gratification, go.
Yeah.
3 days to deliver a VM isn't working. So we said, look, we can give you an environment where you can pull all that out, your security policy, your data retention policy, your versions, your binaries, your images, wrap it up, put it in this hyper-converged environment, and through that operating environment, I can now effectively create a self-service portal where now that can get handled outside of my service request manager.
Right.
Everybody's happy. The VM admin's happy, the IT admin's happy, the compliance officers are happy, and most importantly, your users are happy.
They're getting their VMs when they need them. It's not getting in the way of the actual workflow of creating whatever it is, the product that is being created.
Well, like, God forbid, let's think about our customer here, right?
Let's not be the department of no.
Right. So it's like, yeah, here's the department of sure, you can do it. You're going to have to do it my way. But hey.
Yeah, you're going to have to still fit within policies that we set, and there's going to be resource constraints. It's going to be your problem if you want to run 100 VMs when you've only got capacity to run 50.
Have you ever met a developer that had a strong opinion on what hardware anything runs on?
I think they're usually more concerned about the build chain of tools that go on top.
When you try to talk hardware to a developer, they typically, whatever.
Yeah.
But what they want is they want the efficiency, they want the speed. They don't even care about the economics. Right? It's someone else that cares about
Somebody else's problem there.
So what we tried to do with our HC380 is deliver against cloud speed, cloud economics, and really delivering a very similar user experience to going out to the public cloud.
And that's what you're seeing as being the primary use for these in particular.
So that's the central IT use case.
Yeah.
The other use case that we see is a remote office, where you may not have the right skill set. You might not have a VM admin, a storage admin, a compute admin, and a backup admin.
Right.
Or distributed sites, manufacturing facilities with 50 places across the country. They don't have the OpEx to spend on just dusting off the playbook and refreshing the existing infrastructure. No customer I know, our budget's growing.
Yes.
So as they're having to tighten their belt, they're looking at alternative means to deploy. What we see getting replaced with hyperconverged is for compute attached to storage with some backup solution. And they're looking for a better way to run that. And that's where they're looking at things like the HC380. A 4-node cluster out at a remote site is remarkably capable.
Delivers the same capability as what they had before, and a full rack is now 8U.
And it's a completely different OpEx profile.
And it's all designed to be managed without physical touch. It's rack and stack once.
And when it is, it's now done in a way where no one's exposed to vCenter, right? It works nicely. We've had a couple of environments where we hear feedback from our customers that, hey, my professor can now spin up VMs for his cluster. We've seen smart salesmen at car dealerships be able to do pedestrian IT troubleshooting. When we talk to our channel partners, a lot of times they're the IT backstop for their customers. Now we're making their life a lot easier. One of the things that we've done with the HC380 is not only have we built a very simple user interface that isn't in vCenter, we also have a mobile app.
Right.
So now there's no carrying around your laptop to dinner with your wife. Now I can go directly from that or a tablet and do a lot of this, well, not a lot, I can do some of the remediation that may save me a lot of time. So, we really, really focus our best on how do I make the user experience simplified, easy, and cloud-like.
Great. And of course, as we progress through this build day, we're going to actually build this out and see what it looks like to operate. And maybe we'll actually get it running on a mobile device, and we'll be managing it from a mobile device from here. We'll just have to see how that one runs out.
Excellent.
Well, Bharath, thank you very much for helping us understand a little more about how the HC380 fits into our business's IT. And thank you for being here for the HC380 Build Day.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, the indeterminate time that this phase carries on is carried on longer than Barath. Again, a surprise that he hasn't filled up all of the space with some useful knowledge. We must have trimmed him down a little. While that's running, I wanted to circle back on how it is that we came to have this fault and really try and say it's not all my fault when it actually is all my fault. We needed to add the route off the management network to the storage network in order for all of the management components to be able to see the store virtual. Well, this morning, for the first time in a very long time, this I'm not quite sure it's a data center, but this room we're in, somebody suggested it was Greg's garage. It is not Greg's garage. We are actually on site. I'm going to go completely sideways while we wait because I'm really enjoying the street address here, that it is Compact Computer Way. And I, of course, love the DL380 from Compact days. And when HPE, as it was at the time, HP, bought Compact, I was really pleased that ProLiant won out over NetServer because the ProLiants are just such a nice term. So I'm enjoying being here in what was Compact's headquarters at the time. Returning out of that segue to the side to my other segue to the side about the route to the storage network. So we lost power here this morning. And you can imagine Jeffrey and I are walking in and Greg saying, yeah, we had a power outage this morning and we think everything's back up. And that sinking feeling made me really, really happy that Jeff got me to get up early this morning and be here nice and early. And also that we're 2 hours east of California, where the Pacific time that we're broadcasting in. So we didn't start until 11. We had time to start everything up. But what I didn't do was realize that I had not set a persistent route on the OV for VC machine. And I also didn't have a persistent route on the gateway machine out of my network. So 2 places where I put the route in place and thought things would behave nicely. Yeah, not persistent. It's kind of like when you make a change to a switch config and you don't save it and everything is real, you don't write it out to start config and everything is great until there's a power cycle.
Right.
So now indeterminate delay has completed. Excellent. So we have now an IP address that we can go to manage the HC380 side. We're really finished with the things that we needed this seed box jump host from.
Correct.
We can use a web browser just on our local management machine, my Intel NOC for this. So what am I going to see when I go to that IP address?
So we're going to go in and actually start installing and configuring the HC380 management user interface.
.199.8. It's not private. That's inside my private network. Ooh. Administrator. And this, yes, this was just my standard. This is the admin password that I set during that previous wizard that we saw ages ago before my lack of a route caused us problems. And so we can now go through and do that setup.
Yes. So we have several different options here, identity, vCenter, directory. We're just going to go through them one by one and configure them with our information.
So we set a DNS server address in here, being the first field that's not actually populated. And an embedded OneView IP address. So this is the, well, tell me why we have this.
So it is using OneView under the cover, although we're not interfacing with that with the user interface here, but it does make the API calls through it, and it's the management underneath.
So it's kind of an embedded management component of the HC380.
Correct. And so we get to use the same OneView management software to manage the hardware, but the point of this user interface is it makes it easier to deploy the VMs. You don't have to have that specialization again.
Right. But this is not a replacement for having my own OneView server that I use for the hardware management myself.
Correct. This is separate, and this is for the HC380 nodes or clusters by themselves.
Right. And then if I come back into my spreadsheet where I did all of the planning, there we go. OneView VM is on .7. 192.168.199.7. We're in the vBrownBag data center. That looks all good.
Okay.
Away it goes and does some things for us. I like having computers do things for me. Much easier than doing actual work myself.
This is the automated part. We can let it go.
Calvin Zito loves the fact that there's all that 3-par right behind you.
And really glad to hear this. Hi, Calvin, and really happy birthday to you. It's great that you're watching us on your 29th birthday.
I thought he was 22.
Yeah, he tells people he's 22, but he's actually 29.
Oh, okay.
Calvin was one of my first contacts at HPE, or HP as it was at the time, because we go way back, and also introduced me to Jeff. It was at a HP Tech Day in
Fort Collins.
Fort Collins in Colorado, where I first met Jeff, and it was Calvin that got me out there. I'm thinking through the crowd that we had at that event about 5 years ago, and quite a few of the people have become good friends of mine now.
Oh yeah, we got a pretty tight-knit situation. Many, like you said, a lot of people that are on the stream right now have been to HPE and went through it, and of course all these other events such as VMworld and stuff like that. So
it's all very family. All right, I'm going to bring my desktop back up again because the identity component has completed its configuration, so we're going to edit into the next one. Well, vCenter access.
It's populated.
Already populated.
Go through there.
Trust the certificate because I have a self-signed certificate, and the password's already there because we've already been interacting with vCenter. And then the next thing we'll do is connect to Active Directory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't have to be Active Directory. If you're using another LDAP source, you could use that.
You have the choice.
But we're going to do Active Directory. And I'm going to connect to my domain control. And it says it doesn't like the name, so I'm just going to use the IP address. Yes, trust my certificate. And then I need a base DN. Now, I personally find LDAP DNs can be somewhat confusing because they're very picky about exact spellings and names of things. Okay. And so I usually cut and paste into there. And my favorite tool for this is, I can't type while I'm talking because I'm a male. My favorite tool for getting all of the LDAP DNs out of Active Directory is dsquery. Okay. I used to use ADCEdit and tools like that to try and find this, but dsquery is awesome. You just open up a command prompt on a domain controller and you say, yes, we had a power outage this morning. dsquery, and I'm going to look for a user, and I'm going to look for my own user, the iadmin. Now I'm showing that it has been a couple of months since I last used this. There it is. So I needed to have a -name switch to specify that I'm searching by name, not by GUID or anything like that. Okay. So now I have the full distinguished name for my user ID. Turns out I only need this first section here, which is my domain's distinguished name. So I need the DC equals lab, DC equals local, which I could have typed fairly easily, but I'm sorry, I'm a trainer by profession, and A, you can't shut me up,
no,
and B, I want to teach.
It's good to show, and that way they can get the information if it were different.
Yeah, and particularly I use that for a couple of other places where you need to find distinguished names for objects. I use it quite a lot configuring VMware View at times. So I do the verify on there. Need an account to connect with, so we're going to use our VI admin account and its password. And it says, what roles do we want to give? That's what this is, isn't it? So I'm going to go very simple and just let my VI admin user, who is a sophisticated vSphere user, have access to the whole thing.
But if you had different layers within an organization, you wanted to restrict certain responsibilities, you could do that.
Yeah. Yeah, so the levels at this point are not hugely granular, but we can devolve segments later on if we were to choose to. I don't think we'll do that today, partly because we didn't do it on the dry run, and I haven't created the AD accounts and users that we would need for that. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to use, oh look, there's a search. I just type the first few characters of my group name. I'm going to use the ESX admins group that I happen to know my VI admin user account is a member of. And I'm going to give it an infrastructure administrator, which that's the God role.
Highest level.
What are the other 3 roles? How much do you get access with those?
It depends on the actual menu choices and whether or not you can configure sizes, things to that effect within the actual user environment.
Right. And I particularly like there's a read-only role. Of the, you can see what's going on, but if a change needs to be made, you need to escalate to somebody.
Okay.
That's a nice thing to have.
Definitely.
Click OK on there, and there's no waiting for that one. That's straight away. And then we've got our 3 nodes. So our ILO username was, now this was reset during the rebuild and doesn't match what I have on my spreadsheet. But the account was root, wasn't it?
Give that a shot.
And it was your standard password, because you guys did the rebuild last night. And then we say that I have 3 nodes I want to manage through this, and they're all going to use the shared credentials that I set at the top.
Yep.
One trap I found, these guys aren't in any particular order in here.
Okay. They may not match the way they're in the rack, and right.
So I have according to the ILO IP addresses that correspond to the serial numbers.
We have to match those up, correct? It's not just one-to-one.
So I was going to go to one of the ILOs. 211 I happen to know is the first of the ILOs. Because you don't need to find the toe tag. You don't need to go into the data center and find the toe tag. It's a standard ILO. And you can just come in here and log in with the right password. Or did you? Oh, you didn't reset the ILO passwords, did you? So Greg was just coming over to wave and tell me. Oh, sorry, too many failed attempts. It has to hold off for a little while. I'm just mistyping too much. All right. So this is the second node. Really? It is, well, the lockout is just a sliding time delay as you put the wrong password in. And so ILO's admin, not root. That's what I'm doing wrong. Admin.
Is it admin or administrator?
Oh, it's admin. It's admin.
Admin
Hooray,
worked. Okay.
Right. And then here, as always with an ILO, you have the serial number of the units, and that matches up to the serial numbers that are reported in the UI.
Correct. So
and
rather
after, again, me being at fault for causing a delay, you love customers. Wouldn't life be so much simpler without customers? So back in here, I need to go back up and change the credentials to admin and my password. And then I need to find the node with serial number ending in J8. Now, I went through all 3 nodes yesterday and worked out which ones were which. So in this spreadsheet that you'll be able to download, one of the first fields is what are the ILO addresses. So J8 is the 211 address. So back in here, J8, 211, JJ is 213, yep. And J9 is 212. Okay, so now I should have the correct credentials and the correct IPs for all of my nodes.
So when we're in there, we need to remove one view management from the ILO. Did we do that?
So what am I removing in here? Is this Greg just saying that he created an additional account in here so that he could get back in? Because in here in user administration,
Let's go to the administrator tab at the bottom.
you think does Greg want us to remove
Right hand
this?
side and go to the bottom.
Yeah. Remove that account?
Yeah, just delete the one view things. We did not do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All 3 of them have to do it.
All 3 nodes, I've got to take those off. They were actually there yesterday when we were in actual working operation, is my recollection, but they're not a default part of the build. Login delayed for 30 seconds on 211, so we will go to 213 and take that account out as well.
So Alan notes that a note for ILO: you are not setting ILO credentials here. You are entering them so the UI can talk to the ILO.
Yeah. So back here in the setup of the HC380, we are making the ILO the slave of the HC380 management interface.
Okay.
Rather than actually using this to configure the IP address. So I have to enter at the top the correct credentials that are currently set on the ILO, rather than setting new ones in here.
Right. Did we get all 3 systems?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
This is the one that I was locked out of before.
Easier than go to the bottom. Press space bar. Oh, sorry. Go to the bottom down here. It says HP one view.
Oh, okay. We're doing that.
Click on that. And then delete. We need to do that on all 3 because we didn't reset these after our testing yesterday. Should have done that last night.
There we go. So this was a step of the reset yesterday. Was skipped. Was the HP OneView administration was still in here. So we're taking that out to make it look more like the nodes had only just come from the factory. So that particular phase of removing the HP OneView from the ILO you wouldn't need to do. The primary reason I came into the ILOs was to match up the serial number against the ILO IP address so that I could enter it back here in the HC380 configuration settings. So now when I click OK on this one, should all be good.
Let's give it a shot, yeah.
All right, so we've edited down all of those. The connect and the configure buttons have gone away from the discovery and the nodes, and we go submit, and away it goes to configure some infrastructure. Now in my testing, this ran for somewhere around 10 minutes.
Something like that.
So I think, Jeff, this is a great time to have Bharath tell us about SimpliVity. Have we played that video? I don't think we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that one laid down for here. So,
No, that was an 8-minute one.
yep,
You have that later one here.
SimpliVity 8-minute one for now.
Let's do the real deploy then. Or do it wrong way on
I thought we hadn't played the SimpliVity one yet, but we're done. Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. SimpliVity.
Talking about the acquisition and the results of the acquisition, and hopefully seeing more of my friends here in Houston too. We are back with Bharath. We're talking HC380, and I wanted to address what some people will think is the elephant in the room, which is that HPE this year acquired SimpliVity. Those of you who've been following me know that I've spent a lot of time working with SimpliVity over the last couple of years and think it's really cool and really like the people there. So I wanted to discuss with you a little about how you see the acquisition of SimpliVity changing the positioning for HC380 and what customers should be considering as they're deciding which of these hyperconverged solutions to deploy now and over the next few years.
Sure. Well, first off,
so we're coming back quickly because the long phase of install hasn't worked, and so we'll return to Bharath talking about SimpliVity, but we better go and correct whatever it is that's been broken in this phase. And there we go, .7 is already in use, and so we can't use .7 for one view. Okay, let's see if ping 192.168.199.7. Why, yes, it is in use. .8 is in use because we're already connected to it as this web service. .9 is open. Clearly I need a better IPAM because I'm not managing my IP addresses very well here. So I can't have .7, I'm going to have 192.168.199.9. Yep, my eyeballed IPAM says that address is available. It's popping us for a setup again on the nodes. So since the fields are empty, and it's usually pretty good at remembering things.
Re-enter, yeah.
We'll re-enter all of that information that we had before. So J8 was the 211. Yep, we can get rid of that troubleshooting one we had before. J8 is 211. JJ is 213. And J9 is 212. Alright, let's submit that. And it failed after about a minute, so we'll give it a moment to run before we call back in for Bharath. From memory, it sits at this 15% for a little while and then kicks to 30%.
If we get past this, we'll go back to the video.
Then we'll let Bharath talk about the results of the SimpliVity acquisition and what the future holds for HPE Hyperconverged with that. One of the other things we do need to talk about, because the support guys were calling us out, that we're not actually following good process because you can't see the install guide. We're not showing you the install guide. You should be following along the install guide. And so I have it here on the desktop, and when Richard and I were doing this for the dry run, we had the install guide in front of us, and we have a printed copy over here. The install guide I found by putting in Google HC380 install guide, and it was the first hit was the download page, so it was really easy to find. Yeah. But we will have the download link will be in the show notes for this event as well, so you'll be able to get it there.
And this goes through step by step. Anybody installing the process, it will show you what to enter, what to do next. So.
And this is the official format. The spreadsheet we've been using is one generated by engineers to solve the engineering problem of needing to centralize things. In the install guide are these pre-checks.
Exactly, they're all still there, and either way, it's just gathering the information in advance so we know what to enter into the deployment process.
So there's good information about gathering that, or at least good details of what you need to gather, and then there is the step-by-step process of installing and configuring the cluster. And these are the steps we've been following along without actually holding the manual in front of us. The first 3 to 5 times that you do this, you probably should hold the manual in front of you while you do it and be reminded. The other thing that's in here is, look, a troubleshooting appendix. Here are some things to go and do in troubleshooting, and without needing to go and call your friendly HP rep or your partner to come in and help you with this. Hopefully your partner's there helping you. But without needing an escalation path, there are a whole heap of resolution things in here. And look, OneView Instant On hangs during deployment. Maybe you should do some of these things, like ping all of the IP addresses. The guys in the back channel helping us today didn't hit us with the one they gave us earlier, which was name resolution, name resolution, name resolution. And this is one, if for those who worked with me 10 years ago at a small integrator in a small city in New Zealand, I always said the problem is name resolution. Even if the problem is not name resolution, the problem is name resolution. And that was often true. Now it's the firewall that's blamed for all of these things.
That's the first rule of name resolution, right?
Yeah, check the firewall. So a whole heap of really good information in this guide. At 136 pages, it's probably not something that I would print out every time I do one of these gigs, but then
once you get the process down, like you say, you don't need it. But everything we've been doing today is in here. Some of these issues are because of a power blip this morning or because we're in a lab environment. But the basic procedures of going through the validation tool, the OneView Instant On, the configuring, the management UI, this is all outlined in here. So it's a great resource. And again, once you understand the basic process, no, we don't have to follow step by step, but definitely have the PDF available.
Yeah, and I before we came along, I learned a little bit about how HC380 works by simply reading the install guide. And as the technical person, I don't typically read the marketing information about how the product works because that's aimed at my manager, but I often will read the deploy guide, and particularly I like looking at the troubleshooting section to see what can go wrong, where are the weak points of the product are often really usefully identified in the troubleshooting section. And I particularly like when an organization that's selling a product will tell you, here's the troubleshooting, you know, we acknowledge that things go wrong and here's how to resolve them when they do. Because things always go wrong.
We try to have the basic kind of steps in there to check, and certainly when the basics don't work, we have the support network as well.
Excellent. So we're at 30%, far further through than we did before, so let's let Bharath loose. We are back with Bharath. We're talking HC380, and I wanted to address what some people will think is the elephant in the room, which is that HPE this year acquired SimpliVity. Those of you who've been following me know that I've spent a lot of time working with SimpliVity over the last couple of years and think it's really cool and really like the people there. So I wanted to discuss with you a little about how you see the acquisition of SimpliVity changing the positioning for HC380 and what customers should be considering as they're deciding which of these hyperconverged solutions to deploy now and over the next few years.
Sure. Well, first off, I really also like the SimpliVity people in the brief exposure I've had with them. One interesting thing, though, if you look at our combined portfolio now, we rarely ran into SimpliVity in competitive deals. Their value proposition was built around the best user experience within vCenter and delivering a world-class data path. Ours was all about delivering that user experience outside of vCenter. So those are effectively mutually exclusive circles. So we really never competed much with them. Now, where does it fit in the portfolio? Now we're able to address a lot of the drawbacks people had with SimpliVity. Once that deal closed, we spent some time up at their Westboro headquarters, and they went through with us, you know, why they win deals, why they lose deals. And one of the biggest reasons they lost deals is that customers don't want to trust a startup. I'm going to invest heavily in your technology, and then 6 months from now, you're not around. I'm now left holding a bag. So we can put that to rest. Their technology is in safe hands, and it's going to continue to get invested, and it's going to be the underpinnings for our hyperconverged environment moving forward.
And I was just thinking that's one of the really nice matches between HPE and SimpliVity, is they're both very engineering strong organizations where the engineers are valued, where the innovation and the technology underneath is extremely strong.
I'll give you one example. We always talk about things being enterprise grade. Some of our competitors, their entry-level offer, replication factor of 2, doesn't give you 5 nines of availability, and they mock hardware RAID.
Yeah.
And there were 2 companies whose hyper-converged offers involved hardware RAID. One was Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and the other was SimpliVity. And there's a reason we make those design choices. When you take hardware RAID and marry it with some form of network RAID, you're building that availability into the underlying platform. When you have a hard drive fail, you're not in a panic rebuild mode. Your application delivery and performance doesn't suffer.
And that's one of the videos that I did with SimpliVity, was we had one of their nodes and we pulled a hard drive out and showed that in the UI, reporting that a hard drive has failed, and then about 30 seconds later we pulled out one of the SSDs, and again the UI alerted that there was a failure, but everything continued to operate. VMs were still up. We pulled a second hard drive out, and this was in a 2-node cluster.
Right.
So we'd failed 2 hard drives and an SSD, and we could have done the same in the second node, and all of the VMs would still have been operational.
And it's all about availability and uptime, right? I mean, we recently had a pretty big outage in a public cloud that happened, and it was down for a few hours. But to tell you the truth, they didn't violate any of their SLAs. They say 3 nines available. That's 6 hours of downtime a year. Going back to your comment about engineering-driven organizations, we wanted to make sure that the customer's data was paramount. And those are some of the design choices that we made.
Yes.
It made such a great fit from merging the organizations because the mindset is really built around, how do I provide maximum uptime and availability to a customer?
Yeah.
That's the table stakes to getting in this game. Where we plan on going is through our hyper-converged operating environment, allow multiple clusters to run underneath the same user environment. So anybody who buys in to the HC380, because it solves for their user experience needs outside of vCenter, can know that at some point in the future, that user interface is going to be common.
Right.
So when we do want to implement the OmniStack data path behind there, we're going to have the ability to do so.
And that won't change any of the operational procedures for those people who are using that self-service provisioning of virtual machines.
Correct. Now, having said that, there's 1,300 plus SimpliVity customers today that want vCenter as
their single point of control.
We're not going to mess with that, but we're going to expand the applicability of the OmniStack platform or the SimpliVity platform to customers who do want an alternative user environment.
And you're saying before we were on camera also the Hyper-V as an option for the virtualization layer that sits in that cluster.
It's something that's in tech preview right now from a SimpliVity perspective. We're going to more broadly roll that out later.
It seems clear that there is a path forward with Hyper-Converged, that there are options for what sits underneath the operating environment, as well as options to not use the operating environment if you are wedded to vSphere as your interface. That's going to continue to be an option for customers as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't want to mess with what's made SimpliVity great. We're taking away, it's funny, again, through the travels, we've had these customer questions come up. Hey, we really wanted to deploy SimpliVity on ProLiant.
Yes.
But you didn't want to do that last year or the year before.
Yeah, you weren't one of the partners that they announced last year.
Right, so we ended up deploying on an alternative infrastructure. Now that you have it on ProLiant, can we expand our existing clusters with HPE DL380 nodes? The answer is yes. The SimpliVity architecture is done in such a way that as long as you match your storage environment, I can scale clusters.
Right.
So moving forward, your existing environments that are running with competitive hardware can now run
so
DL380.
We're going to see DL380 models that match up to the hardware configuration of the OmniStack models.
So yeah, right now we're working on all flash. It's available today.
Nice.
That's where we put our best foot forward, right? The best user experience with SimpliVity is with the all flash models. Performance is almost a non-issue at that point.
Yeah, it's another. I have practically infinite storage performance.
You said that.
Practically.
Yes.
The reality I've talked about is that you don't need infinite storage performance. You need one IOP more than demand. And it's indistinguishable when you have one more or 100 more.
Well, but what you do find out,
latency also kicks in.
What you do find out is the first time you write to the spinning media.
Yes.
That's what we've launched. It's available today.
Yes.
And as we build out the roadmap over the course of the year, we're looking at different configurations. obviously, there's a big server transition happening this year as well. So we're planning on intercepting all of that, and making sure that we have the answers within the SimpliVity 380 portfolio, which is what we're calling
That's the brand, so.
the HPE SimpliVity 380. Goes without saying that anytime you hear SimpliVity in the brand name, we can understand what the data path is.
Right.
So that's really our path moving forward. So as you alluded to in a different video, Synergy is the brand for composable. SimpliVity is going to be the brand for hyperconverged moving forward.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Barath, for talking about how SimpliVity fits with what's existing and some of the futures. I believe you were a little brave about blogging about that. We will put into some notes on this video a link to your blog post so people can read a little more about that. So thank you again for joining me, Barath.
No, thanks for having me, Alistair.
Well, as you can see, while Barath and I were talking, the configuration completed. Right. And what am I going to get when I hit the dashboard button?
We can go in and get to hit the dashboard, and we're going to actually see the user interface. We can start. This hasn't been set up yet, but we can hit the icon in the upper left. This is the dashboard on the side. We can see the different menu options that are available, from virtual machine, activity, images, and we're actually going to go through a deployment here of what it would be like to deploy a VM.
All right, so where do I start?
Well, did you set up the data stores?
No, we haven't got any data stores yet.
Okay, so we have to go do that.
All right. Where do I go to set up a data store?
Let's go for vCenter, actually.
Okay.
We do not do that here.
We did not use that one because the plugins work with the web client, not the .NET client, so I better use this one here that will want me to log in again. And we get the usual loading time for the web client. I guess the normal vSphere client takes a while to load as well, but I'm just more familiar with the messages it sends me as it does that.
Okay. No, this is fine.
I'm trying to make excuses for the web client, but I'm not sure I'm succeeding. One of the notes that I didn't cover in the install guide is that it does include directions around the hardware rack and stack. So putting the rails into the rack and putting the server on and cooling and clearances and all of those other DL380 deployment considerations. And they are the same considerations as any DL380, aren't they?
Correct. The underlying hardware is a DL380, but the HC380 has that integrated virtualization, the storage management, the user interface. It's not on a standard DL. Now, yes, so that install guide, going back to that, it has everything in it. It's a complete guide. So you may not use everything if you're very familiar with the setup, but it's there as a reference.
All right, so where am I going to create this data store? Maybe I should look at creating data stores somewhere in here in the install guide, since the support team want us to remind you to use this.
Sure, let's search for that.
Where are we? We're in this management initial configuration, creating data stores. So we log in, it's through, we're going to go to hosts, clusters, find our cluster, and on the summary tab. All right, host and clusters, Houston cluster, summary tab. Do you think I still need to keep reading it, or do you think we can wing it and learn how to do it here?
In the interest of time, we can wing it and do it here, but the information is
I was going to say winging it hasn't done really well for me lately.
Tell you what, let's go through the install guide then.
So the install guide then says we hit the summary, and down the bottom we should see the plugin, which we've just seen that in it, and then we want the manage tab and HP management. So on our cluster, manage. Oh look, an HP management tab. While that loads, what are we expecting there? So all HP management actions create data store, so just from the actions drop down. All right, so we've got our HP OneView information in here. Again, if we had a full one view deployment, there'd be richer information through this.
You can take it in there.
But we're going to go actions, and we're going to go create data store.
Yes.
And again, while that loads, the instructions are to set a size and number of data stores, and then specify a RAID level. So it looks like it's pretty simple, and it looks like I've chosen one of the ones that I could probably have gotten right all by myself. So I want the Houston cluster. It's the one that's got some storage. I want some storage from store virtual. I'm going to create just one data store, and I'm just going to create a 0.5 terabyte data store.
Okay.
Network RAID 10 from the drop down. Yep, that's the right choice. Next. Names. I'm going to call my one data store prod data store 1.
Okay.
Partly because that's what I did yesterday, and I wrote a PowerShell script that requires that name.
So we have to use the same name, and that's fine if your scripts are written for those things, but you can take that into account.
Oh, absolutely. I could have. Ooh. So vCenter already knows about prod 1, so it won't let me create a new prod 1. This is vCenter knowing about data stores and not letting you reuse the name unless it would see it as being a snapshot of prod 1 that it had seen previously. So my script, I'm going to have to change 1 to 2.
You have to change 1 to 2 in there. Okay.
So validating provisioning job, please wait. Validation successful. Nice.
Excellent.
Go do it. Make me a data store. Is it finished yet? Well, way to
Poof, your
tell.
data store.
Related objects and data stores. And now we can see the rescan activity when the automatically trigger the rescan of the iSCSI HBAs on all of the ESX servers in the cluster.
Okay.
And I better refresh, oh no, create VMFS data store. So it's seen the LUN, now created the VMFS. And then refresh storage again. And I'm going to need to refresh just the UI here to see that change. And look at that, a prod 2 data store, 500 gigabytes in size.
Showed up. Excellent.
There
And all
it
the
is.
information we just entered.
So Alan basically said, you want the cluster selected as it was done so that the data store is seen by all nodes on the shared storage.
So that was when we were, the first page of that, the add storage, and because I'd gone to the HP management on the Houston cluster, it automatically selected the cluster when we went to that first page, so I didn't have to manually select it. But yes, if I had multiple of these clusters and that remote office branch office environment, I might have, or I will have,
Right.
one HC380 cluster at each of my remote offices.
Locations. Yep.
Kind of important to create the data store at the right place.
Yeah.
Great, so now I've got storage. We were going to go back to that
Let's
vending
go back
machine,
to
weren't we?
the user interface. So now that we're in here, we see the different menu options. We can go through them, but we were actually going to go deploy a VM, right? But before
Yes.
that, we have to do something else.
What's that?
We have to upload an image because this is a new install. We don't have any images in there right now.
Okay, and I guess that's in the images.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
go ahead and click the images.
There we
There's
go.
nothing there right now you can see, so let's go ahead and click the add button.
And of course, I'm in as an infrastructure administrator, so I can do everything.
Yes,
This is-
right. For the different users we set up.
Choose a file. This is a OVA, so Open Virtualization format, single file virtual machine. I've previously downloaded, excuse me for one moment while I pour some water down my throat to get rid of the lumps. Much better. I previously downloaded this Photon OVA, so it's the VMware Linux distribution that they came out with for running their virtual appliances and containers on.
Okay.
So I downloaded this beforehand. It's a nice small Linux implementation that's easy to find.
Just going to upload it actually into this user environment.
So we wait for the 300 megs to upload. And this bit threw me the first time is suddenly the upload's complete and it's not showing me anything, but in a moment it will actually pop in and process that image as my recollection.
Let's give it a second. If not, we can go back to the dashboard and come back here and see if it refreshes
the screen. Yeah, this one got me. I thought, what have I done wrong? And particularly since you guys weren't around to ask, let's go back to the front dashboard and then back into the images screen. No, it's still processing.
Okay.
Hard at work thinking.
We'll give it a little more time.
Maybe we shouldn't watch the pot boil.
So go ahead and click activity, see what's...
So it errored. It errored on the upload. Okay. So that again is vCenter knowing about objects. So I'm just going to rename that OVA and take the serial number and just leave the build version on there.
Okay.
So it's again, vCenter remembers objects and won't let you create new ones, because after the dry run I just deleted the whole cluster out rather than cleanly evacuating all the objects.
Okay, so let's give it another shot.
So what I'm seeing is we need to do 2 dry runs to see the results of the first one. And there it is, comes back again and does the processing.
Okay.
And now it's imported the whole OVA, validated the OVA, probably does all of those checksum pieces using the OVF tool.
Check it out. But now it's imported and we can use it.
All right.
So you ready to deploy the VM?
You know, there's another step.
Okay.
Because this is a brand new vSphere cluster. I haven't configured the networking on it.
We have to go do that.
I better configure some networking. So I need to create the port groups, because on my existing ESXi server, if we manage networking, on my virtual switch, on the virtual switch with all my VMs attached to it, I got a bunch of port groups down here, and I need this bunch of port groups for my virtual machines. I've got VMs attached to all these port groups. So I'm just going to pop into my cluster and go and add on vSwitch 1 also, which is the one with all of the VM networking on it. I'm going to go in here. That's not what I wanted to do. You can tell that I'm more comfortable with a different interface. I need to do add networking, and I have a virtual machine port group on vSwitch 1, and it needs to be called internal. But of course, I also need that on the next ESX server in the cluster, because I'm not using a distributed switch. So I'm going to go ahead and create another one for the internal port group on, oops, I need to create it on vSwitch 1, not vSwitch 0. My internal network, and we'll finish on that one and add it to the third one as well, just for consistency. I want my VM to be able to move around amongst these.
We need to have it on all 3 now.
Yeah, it's kind of a good idea to have that consistency. Well, that was great, but I got 3 more port groups to create, and I don't want to do it this way.
Okay.
So back over here in the deployment machine, we've got Power CLI available, and why is there not a proper start menu on these machines? I would run Power CLI on my local Windows 7 machine, but something has messed up all of the Windows updates on it. I cannot get the WMF update, the management framework update to work. And I pre-created myself a PowerShell script as one should. And it connects to my vCenter server. And actually I should change the user ID to being me, because I said everything that was done by me should show up as the VI admin account. And that PowerShell script just creates some port groups. So let's grab the text of that and pop it into this PowerShell command prompt. No, I don't want to join customer experience improvement. And paste my PowerShell in. Being vBrownBag, we like to automate all the things, and so here is automating and creating the rest of my port groups. Job done, much happier. So if I refresh network information, nobody will be at all surprised to find that I've now got more port groups. These pod port groups exist now. Cool, so now I have my networks, we can go back into that, creating a virtual machine that we talked about.
Excellent. And actually, can we go back to images real quick?
Sure.
Just want to check and call to attention that there are some restricted characters on the naming of that, so no spaces, no special characters, just good to keep it simple, and that way we won't have any errors going on.
So think about it as a Unix file system name kind of standards. No slashes, backslashes, question marks, stars.
And sometimes, yeah, if you're using those, just take them out, rename it, and it'll save us headaches later on.
Right.
So,
and again, the failures will show up in the activity view.
So yeah, we can go through all those. The activity view is a great way. We could log in and see that, hey, there was an error with that, but now you see we are fine, and it had all the port groups that you added.
In fact, because of course we care about those for the network settings as well.
Exactly. So now let's try virtual machines. So we don't have any in right now, but let's say we wanted to add one. Let's give it a name. We can select the size. Now, there's a couple predefined sizes in there. As you see here, we haven't set them up. We can go into settings and change them if you want, if your organization needs special.
So fitting with this standard operating environment for the organization, we can
exactly
set those.
You can define them there.
Yeah. So I'll make them a medium.
So, and we added the images. So let's go select an image.
Just type the first character in, and it sends up.
And the networks, which you added.
I think IN internal. Look at that. That's the port group that I manually created because I want this machine to be attached to my internal production network.
Then scroll down, click Add.
And he's away creating, running the creation of the virtual machine.
Right.
And of course, when we come over here in the vSphere client, we should be able to actually see that occur. Maybe not instantly, because this is the vSphere client after all.
Okay.
But we can see Jeffrey has now been
Jeffrey's
created as a virtual machine.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, we just created a virtual machine called Jeffrey, so we're not talking to you.
Oh, okay. I am now a virtual machine. Hello, Dave.
So
I should have called it vJeffrey.
So it is up and running. So you see that the steps were, and this could be used by an end user, a developer. We didn't need to go into vCenter if they wanted to use this user interface. Just a couple clicks and here it's up and running.
It's a build process on Rails for that virtual machine, and guest OS customization is being applied to it. So it's using standard vCenter guest OS customization. Away it goes, and our machine is online, and we can see its utilization of resources here in the console. Very importantly, we can see its IP address, because of course the end user is going to want to connect to it.
If they want to, right, exactly. They're not going to go through here. They can just go straight to the machine.
Yeah. Nice, and we saw exactly that machine here in the vSphere client.
Exactly.
I probably have to select. Oh, I need to refresh. Oh, that's recent objects. Let me refresh it this way and see if I can get the left-hand pane to show me Jeffrey. There's Jeffrey. Hi, Jeffrey. And there he is. Virtual machine is up and operational. And we can see a console on it. There's some characters in there that I can see because I'm nice and close to my screen. People watching the stream, you're a little further away from me, and so you possibly can't see that on the screen. It's one of the cool things for me working with this particular machine. I have a recent version of View installed, not View, of a VMware Workstation installed. And I do quite a lot of the management of vSphere through VMware Workstation.
Okay.
So when I just said open me a console on this new Photon machine, it actually gave me the console inside the VMware Workstation, which is a much nicer console for me. I like a native application more than a web. So that was easy. We could create more virtual machines.
Absolutely.
In their images.
It's the same process, the same number of steps.
And any OVA, any virtual appliance that supports guest customization we could use with this. That's nice because there's a lot of virtual appliances around, and it's quite a convenient way of distributing a consistent standard build. Because that OVA could be a fully built machine. It could be the standard, I don't know, proto domain controller, not actually a domain controller yet, but it could be a standard machine, or it could be a standard Linux server that you need.
You could have everything in there, right? Saved as the image.
And then we could set some policy. Can we set policies about a particular image goes on only on a particular size of virtual machine?
You might be able to. I've seen a lot of flexibility there. It's
Right.
It's not something that has to be done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have our VM up. So that's our first VM up and deployed on our HC380 cluster. We can see it both through the vSphere client for me as the vSphere administrator, but we can also see it and work with it through the simplified user interface if I'm the VM owner. That's cool. I can even take a snapshot from here.
You can do it here and then, yeah, export it as you need. Into
I hope we can control that, because I don't necessarily trust somebody who doesn't understand snapshots. And I could assign to a named user at this point and say, this belongs to somebody.
Exactly. So
Nice.
if it were deployed for them, but.
Cool. And we could go on deploying more virtual machines through the simplified interface, but I think the audience is mostly going to use the vSphere interface rather than the simplified one. And this interface is going to be great for creating new VMs, but I got a bunch I need to bring in.
So let's work on that.
So what's my process for bringing those machines in?
We can go back to the other vCenter and we can migrate them over, or you can you mentioned also scripting them as well, right?
Yeah, and the other thing for me is I'm old-fashioned, all this grey here, and I don't particularly like the shared nothing migrate to take, because these VMs are starting out on local storage on my existing AirSec server, or if I had a larger environment, I might have an older fiber channel SAN. Maybe what I'm doing is replacing a couple of older DL360s attached to an MSA array. It might even be a SAS attached array at a client site, and I'm migrating that workload across onto my brand new HC380. I'm deeply suspicious of the shared nothing migrate, because when it goes wrong, I would expect it to go really badly, messily wrong. And some of the reason I don't have much here is I've seen that happen in earlier products.
Oh boy, okay.
So I'd quite like to make the storage in the HC380 available to my server that I'm coming from.
Okay.
That seems like a doable thing, because it's just store virtual and I can attach to that.
Right.
So I'm going to do that by first finding the manage. Oh, I'm on Jeffrey. I need to be on my old ESXi server. And manage the storage. And I need, so Store Virtual uses the iSCSI qualified name as the access control method. So it's not, some iSCSI arrays use the IP address as the control mechanism for what can access the iSCSI array. Store Virtual uses the IQN. So we need the properties of this, and we need the iSCSI name, the iSCSI qualified name of this iSCSI adapter in my old server. So I'm just going to grab that into Clipboard. Hopefully I got it in Clipboard. Let me try one more time. Copy that. And I earlier had the CMC, the Central Management Console, for left-hand open. And let's go with this one because that's authenticated. And for anybody who's used the CMC in the left-hand or Store Virtual, this is very familiar. We come in here and we add ourselves a server. My server is called Legacy. And this is my existing server. And it's managed through my vCenter server, so I'm going to put my vCenter server IP address in here. Here's on .6, and then my IQN. So that's in. And then I'm going to give them access to that data store. So that's one of the really great things is that I can see that I have my prod2 data store is right here. And it's got the same name, or almost the same name, in the CMC as it has on the data store. So it's easy to identify the object. And once again, I have multiple places I can do management through.
Access both.
I'm sure there's another way of doing this, but I'm doing it the legacy left-hand way. And I just didn't hit the assign. There we go, assigned. Yes, multi-writer is supported with vSphere. So now the Store Virtual knows about my ESXi server. Now my ESXi server needs to go out and do a rescan to find the Store Virtual side. And yes, I have more devices. So I can see I've got a Starwind that I use for a backup on my machine, but we've now got the left-hand iSCSI. So the left-hand identifier is still there in the Store Virtual. It makes me happy because the left-hand comes from a brewery. I'm a fan of breweries. I like the occasional adult beverage. And then in storage devices, we should see a new data store. Oh, no, that's devices. Sorry, I should be looking at data stores. So I should be looking in here at related objects and data stores. So we should see the prod2 data store show up. And there it is, prod2 data store is available to me.
It's there and visible now.
So now my really conservative migration methodology, I can select one of my virtual machines and say I just want to migrate, and say I'm conservative. I'm just going to change the storage initially. And we're going to go next and say the destination storage is going to be my prod2 data store. Next. Finish. And storage vMotion kicks in and relocates my master virtual machine. He's not a huge virtual machine, but he will take a minute or two to move. Let's see how big he is. He's 6 gigs.
Okay.
Shouldn't take terribly many minutes to move from one to the other. While we wait though, I'm just going to find my other PowerShell script, which was the migrate VM script. And you remember I couldn't use the prod1.
So we had to change it to prod2, right?
Yeah, so prod2 is there and prod2 is there. So get the virtual machines that are on DS2 and move to the data store prod2.
Okay.
And then I do a second line here, which is to do the vMotion. So I do them as 2 steps.
Okay.
So that relocate has moved my virtual machine. So master is now on the prod2 data store rather than the local data store instead of the ESXi server. Great. So what I should be able to do then is migrate him again. And say this time I just want to change compute. And I'm going to push him across. And I'm going to do it to the cluster, to the Houston cluster, please. I got some warnings because there's an ISO that's not going to be available. That shouldn't cause any problems with the migration. My port groups exist, which is always good. and then we finish. And we count ourselves extremely lucky that the CPU types were compatible from my Intel NUC to this DL360 to the HC380 platform. All of them had the same CPU type, so the vMotion goes without having to set EVC types across the way.
Pretty good.
I was really pleased with that. Pure good luck. So now I've got an actual virtual machine that was from legacy has come into the HC380 environment. Nice and easy. The thing that surprised me was that in my list of virtual machines, if I can keep the right fingers on, it just shows up. No matter how it came to be, I've got access to it through the simplified user interface, and now my master virtual machine is here.
So even if it were created there, you can still access it here. So
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah, both ways around work. So at this point, I'm going to pre-populate all of the data that I need to mass migrate my virtual machines. Pop back over to my PowerShell prompt and paste those in. And then do this line. If you're doing this as a real migration, and I'm not sure that I want to follow exactly the methodology I've got in here, because I've got, how many virtual machines do I have that I'm going to migrate? I think I've got about 10 virtual machines in here. I'm with client. There's a bunch of virtual machines in there.
Quite a few.
And when I launch this script, every virtual machine is going to get migrated. And that's going to take a little while. And although 10 machines is actually not terribly many, if I was migrating 100 virtual machines, and I'm not sure I want all 100 to go at once. Because that conservative, when things go wrong, I would want them to go wrong small. So there are some good references online about using PowerShell job control to sequentially move the VMs.
Okay.
Even if you do a for each, it doesn't wait till the first one's migrated before the next one. The migrate task, they all kick off in parallel. So yeah, be a little careful. Now this is going to take quite a while to complete. This is going to take maybe 20 minutes to migrate all of these virtual machines, and it's I think the performance here is limited by the fact that this DL360 doesn't have many spindles under it.
Gotcha.
And so the read speed is the limitation on transfers. So what have we not played of our videos, pre-recorded videos?
We do the factory.
So the factory one is what Richard and I talked about earlier on, about the build that comes from the factory on all of the nodes and is the same on every node.
Okay.
And those pieces.
Deploy.
The real deploy? Yeah, let's play the tape. Hi there, welcome back to the vBrownBag build day here at HPE in Houston, looking at the HC380 Hyper Converged platform. And with me is Richard Greenwald, who is one of the tech marketing engineers here at HPE.
Hello.
Hey, I thought we should talk a little more about where we see this being deployed, what customers, how they approach using HC380, and particularly in light of the very broad product portfolio that HPE has. And we had a little bit of perspective in that with Bharath in one of the other videos, but I thought it'd be worth digging in a little further, particularly with an engineer. Sure. Rather than a product manager who is a little more attached potentially to some of the aspects. But the way Bharath talks about this, the kind of deployment use cases are a little siloed a lot of the time and driven by a lot of use cases. Mm-hmm. Where do you see those things happening?
So this is a great virtualization solution. If the customer needs VDI or remote office, branch office, this is a great application they can use. The developers can deploy VMs as needed, but and it can do a lot of things. However, it's all on virtualization, and if the application is going to have a slightly longer shelf life, this is a great product.
So this is your general purpose virtualization, or just your platform of virtualization for things that are going to be around for a little while.
Absolutely.
And what we as infrastructure engineers think of as servers, because they last a while.
Mm-hmm. So this is the hyper-converged. If they're going to last a while, this is a great way to deploy those workloads.
But it still also gives you that self-service. You can devolve the ability to create VMs down to the business unit that owns it.
Exactly. You don't need for the application developer to submit a work request each time they need a new VM. And even if it's only once a month or something, the end user can deploy them as needed.
And then I think it's worth talking some more about the other products that are in the HPE portfolio that sort of sit around and answer some of the other use cases.
Sure. So we offer HPE Synergy, which is a great new product. And it can run virtualization as well, but it's great for enterprise applications that do have long shelf lives. Also, it's great for DevOps environments where a user may stand up half a dozen applications for a day and then take them down. You can compose the infrastructure, the storage, simplified networking, Composer, image streamer. A lot of great opportunities there for customers to use.
Right, and that's a more automatable platform where potentially it's better adapted for short-lived DevOps workloads where maybe a virtual machine is only going to live for a couple of hours,
right? And
the overall environment is going to need to create hundreds of virtual machines in a month, potentially.
Yes, it can do both, but it's great for that. You can compose the storage as needed as many times a day as you want. You tie them to server profiles through HPE OneView, and it's a great way to stand up half a dozen in a day, take them down the next day. It's not hard to do at all.
Right, and then for the customers who want more of the conventional multi-tier infrastructure using things like the 3 PARs that we got behind us and probably more DL or Blade servers as their compute for their virtualization platform, that's absolutely still an option with HPE's product set.
We have a complete portfolio. If they want to take DL 380s, 3 PAR, and build their own solutions, we fully support that. And it fully integrates with Synergy and Hyperconverged if they wish to go down select these products at a later date.
So having a silo of Hyperconverged doesn't stop you from also having a nice big collection of other solutions to your various business problems. It's not a case of we only have a hammer and everything's a nail, so we solve it all with our hammer.
Exactly.
Well, hopefully that's a little bit more detail, a little bit more clarity around how the HC380 sits into enterprise customers' environments, some of the uses for it. We will have a whole heap more video from the build day. So thank you again, Richard, and keep watching the vBrownBag stream. All right, well, the migrations are progressing. We're at, what, 27% complete on the migration, and or at least the bulk of the migrations, it's 27% complete. So we've got a few more minutes to go. Here in the web client, we should see some updates to tell us that those migrations are in progress, but I don't see them in the recent tasks here. I am again going to go curmudgeonly old school and use the old .NET client, since I'm still allowed to use it on this environment. It's a rare pleasure because most of my lab environments are now vSphere 6.5 rather than the 6.0, and so that's not an option for me to use this. So it's almost getting nostalgic for this .NET client. And of course, when it was all we had, we never thought we'd be nostalgic for it. We always cursed this client until we had something else to curse instead. So we should see the actual migrations much more clearly in progress in the .NET client. They're probably there if I did a proper refresh of my web client as well. So you can see a bunch of parallel migrations in play, all of the storage migrations, and the smaller virtual machines have moved along further than some of the others, or at least the first ones to be migrated. So some are finished, most are still in progress. So I think was that those continue. We have another video that I did with Greg where we talk about some of the architectures around the HC380 and about deployment. And this is the one where we talk about that's the quorum where you've only got a 2-node implementation.
With the 2-node deployment, we need something
you need
else.
something to do a tie break, and I discussed that with Greg yesterday. So Jeffrey, when you're ready, play the tape. Welcome back to the vBrownBag build day here in Houston at HPE Enterprise. Looking at the HC380, and joining me today is Greg Park. Hi Greg. What's your title here at HPE Enterprise?
I'm a pre-sales technology consultant. So I work in a group that does a lot of hands-on. We work with customers face-to-face, putting these in place, helping them with proof of concepts, implement whatever problems they have. We try to help them solve those.
And do you then bring a lot of the learning from the things that customers need to do back in and feed that back into development?
I do. I talk to our marketing and development team quite a bit. So
you're the product manager's favorite person.
I am.
You always have suggestions.
They all have me on their ignore list on their email. Yeah, this guy's...
One of the things I wanted to talk about with the HC380 is what the deployment scenarios are like about putting clusters of these out. Okay. A lot of the time with a hyperconverged solution, you always need a majority node cluster. You need a multiple set of nodes, and under any failure, you need more than half of the nodes to survive. And that's why normally we see a 3-node minimum for a hyperconverged solution. Talk me through what's required if I want less than 3 nodes of HC380.
So we do support 2 nodes with the HC380, and then we needed something to determine, am I alive, is he alive, what's going on? So we have a quorum drive out there. It could be a simple NFS share. We have a thing called a failover manager. It could be either one of those products, and that will determine, hey, the 2 380s can look at that and they can determine, did one die, am I alive, who's alive? So quorum can do that.
Dealing with that possibility of a split brain that you get with a 2-node cluster.
Exactly it.
Right. And so, just to be clear, the failover manager, or sometimes referred as the FOM, that was always a virtual machine that ran the left-hand now still virtual software but with no storage on it.
Yes.
But we've now got the ability to use just an NFS share as a core.
Yeah.
So if I've got maybe 2 of these running my virtualization platform, but I've got a filer of some sort at the site, the filer could be that quorum. I wouldn't need to have some virtualization host for it.
Absolutely, or it could be a remote site. We have customers that put these out in remote sites, and then maybe Houston's the main data center. I create that NFS share here, and it's NFS, so I don't need a whole lot of bandwidth there. I think it's 300 milliseconds time from there, so it's forever in computer terms.
One NFS share for multiple of these clusters, or is that
it could be one for multiples, and there's a little file it creates in there, so each one has its own file. So you can have one that I administer in a data center. Administer NFS is easy.
And then as we go past 2, do we prefer having odd-numbered nodes if it's available? Do we care?
We don't care, even though you might get into discussion how you do RAID 10 on odd numbers, but that's actually due to the storage system. It really doesn't matter. Most of the installs I see tend to be odd numbers, and I think that's just
a mental state of
in there.
This is how you do.
I see a lot of 3s, 4s, and then 10. So I'm not sure why we go from 4 to 10, but it does. It's one of those. Maybe it's binary, 1-0. So
RAID 10 nodes.
There you go.
And then it's a single cluster is a 16-node maximum for
16 node. We can argue with guys internally if you want more. We do have support processes to do more. If you're supporting more than 16 nodes in a cluster, might have that question. Is that
an architectural sensible decision? Because the cluster is conceptually it's a failure domain, and you're making it pretty large by the time you've got 16 of these.
So you can do 32, but again, we support 16 officially. Call us and we'll talk to others.
If I've got a cluster already built with 2, 3, 4 nodes and I need more capacity, how easy is it to add additional nodes to that cluster?
It's simple. You drop the node into the rack, plug it in, and then go to your OneView instant on and say add node. Wait 5-6 minutes, and now you have a storage. And that will take care of all the storage expansion and everything for you. So now you've added X terabytes.
And it does the vCenter integration as well, and adds the node to vCenter and adds it into the cluster.
ESX node number 5, for example, shows up. You can see it, and then my VSA will grow, so my storage is grown, and you did nothing but plug it in and say add.
Presumably there's a background data rebalance in there as well as I add capacity.
But you don't have to do anything to it. That's all done underneath the hood by the storage software. The VSA underneath will balance that and do that for you. So it's pretty hands-off.
Well, thanks, Greg, for discussing cluster sizes and some of the considerations around the cluster sizes. We're going to try and mine more information out of Greg. He's has been busy. We wanted to get him in here earlier today, but he had to go and deal with some issues at a customer and make them happy. So we're going to get a bit more out of his brain, and we'll hear a bit more from Greg. So thank you very much for joining me, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, well, we are Still watching the progress bar progressing. Quite a lot more of the virtual machines have finished their migration, but reading from that 2-drive or 3-drive array is not giving us great throughput. Jeffrey's put up the social links and suggested that you get in touch with us if you have any questions. Now is a great time to do that because I think we're in the last 20 minutes of this event. We are pretty much close to the end. Once these VMs are all
close.
across and ready to go on the new environment, we'll see that the old ESX server is just empty and we could decommission him. And our migration is complete. So if you have questions, send them through to us on YouTube or on Twitter. If you think of those questions later tonight, if you think, oh darn it, I should have asked, send them through to us today. We are spending some time here tomorrow. Jeffrey and I will be back here tomorrow creating some more video as well, and we can get answers to your questions and get those posted up. If you've been away and at lunch for some of this, don't despair, you haven't missed anything. The recordings will be available on YouTube later on. We'll get the interviews that we've been playing up on there pretty fast, and then I'm going to be cracking the whip to get Jeffrey moving on getting all of the 4 hours of content from today turned into some segments that you might want to see.
Well, now that I'm a virtual machine, I think I could do that.
We should probably clone Jeffrey a couple of times so we can have multiple of him doing the work. Also, let us know if there are particular segments of what we've demoed over the time that you think would be really useful. I don't think we've quite managed to get a bloopers reel other than me repeatedly explaining that it was my fault that things went wrong. I wasn't a real customer because I admitted it was my fault. I should really be blaming somebody else for my mistakes if I'm going to be a real customer. So yeah, do bring in the questions.
Yes.
Richard would love to hear from them.
No, we can go through and answer any questions today, tomorrow.
Actually, there's one other thing that I did mention earlier that I wanted to talk with you about because you work as a tech marketing engineer.
Correct.
And technical marketing is kind of one of those weird workspaces. What is it that you do? Can you drill a little into what you do as a tech marketing engineer?
Sure. No, technical marketing, it's an organization responsible for creating training materials, sales materials, but more technical focus. So it's not the high-level business case, but it does get into speeds and feeds. But this is exactly it, the deployment process. How do you go about it from the validation check tool, the OVIO, the setting up the management user interface, the data stores. This is pretty much what we do, but we will do it with Greg, our pre-sales organization. So it's a good way to kind of get this word out to the technical marketing, to the technical organization, but then also it feeds into the customers in terms of the people actually deploying the hardware. What problems are they going to run into day by day? And so what user interfaces are you going to be working with?
Cool. And then what is your personal journey? So
okay.
How did your career lead up to this momentous moment of being the technical expert on, or at least the front technical expert, because there have been plenty of others behind. How did your career bring you to be sitting in the seat beside me today?
So always liked building stuff and working on stuff. So I have a bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering. Started out as server engineering, actually building similar boxes to this on the hardware side, the layout, signal integrity, storage, those types of things. And I really liked it. I learned a lot from it. It kind of gave me the foundation to work on this. Wanted to do a little bit more, so I kind of transitioned into marketing. And that also leads directly to the technical marketing. It's not just, high-level business value, which is very important and we need to convey. But it's the training, the selling of this on the technical level. So it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. I like what I do, and certainly have a lot of respect for the engineers who design this and work on it day in, day out.
Cool. And technical marketing engineer is some of what I do is technical marketing engineer for hire. So I've written training materials. So when you do the readiness for the SimpliVity training, you may recognize a voice on some of those courses.
That's you,
if Chris Buzzy hasn't re-recorded them all because he didn't like my accent, then there'll be training with my voice.
I'll
on
keep an eye out for it. No,
who doesn't like your accent? I don't know. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, there's all kinds of strange people in this world.
Okay, well they're strange then. So, got a couple comments on the chat here. Talking about the web client, and it was Alan that said something about the web client is needed for the OV4 VC to work properly.
Yes, all of the plugins that we saw. So the .NET client that I'm using here, because I say grey hair and get off my lawn, I find it more responsive to Vue, but there is no awareness of the OpenView for vCenter in here. There is no HPE logos anywhere in this, whereas across in the web client where we did all of the work with the actual configuration of the cluster, this is where I have the ability to do the HP monitoring. I need to be on the cluster to do that. All of the plugin components that adds the additional HP awareness stuff is here in the web client, and it's not available in the .NET.
Okay. No, excellent. Thanks for bringing that up.
But we still don't see those recent tasks of the relocate showing up, and that'll be a straight out. Oh, there they are. Refresh. Got to refresh at the top. So now my migrates, the last few migrates are showing up in the web client, and we're nearly all the way across. At least for the storage. I haven't yet vMotioned any of these VMs. They're still sitting on my legacy host. They're just using the hyperconverged storage.
Okay.
So we'll let the last couple come across. Last one is 91%. So grab my vMotion. So the next PowerShell is just going to be every virtual machine that is on that prod2 data store. Migrate it so it's on the cluster, or at least on one of the cluster nodes in the Houston cluster. So have all of those migrates finished. Well, let's have a look at PowerShell. PowerShell says we've migrated all of these VMs.
Great.
So storage migration is complete. So I'm now going to do the vastly quicker vMotion of these virtual machines. And while that's still in progress, I better refresh my view down here so we can see those vMotions. And already we're making good progress on those. We can see at the bottom of the list a virtual machine called VC, which is 30% moved. That means the actual VM memory is being moved at that point, and all of the vMotion interfaces are correctly configured, which is nice.
Excellent.
And they're progressing along. I guess I need to refresh that and make sure it's still showing me up to date. So again, doing a bunch of VMs, quite a few have completed. Still a few still to run. We're at 53%, 54% of migrating vMotioning 10 VMs. I'm happier to vMotion large numbers of VMs like this than I am with the storage vMotion, so okay. 100 would go. Remembering that there's constraints around the VM kernel allowing concurrent vMotions, because we have only a 1 gig NIC, I think, out of on our vMotion network for the source ESXi server for the 360. Then that's 2 concurrent vMotions, and so the 10 VMs, it's going to take a little while for them all to complete out.
Okay.
But we're hitting, what, 90%, 87, 88. But at this stage, we can see them in the other interface as well, of course.
Yeah, so let's go take a look at that.
So that message down here, where was that alert gone? There was an alert when I did the vMotion of that first machine. You remember in the vMotion wizard it said there's a CD-ROM drive that's connected to an ISO that we can't see from the destination cluster. That's the error that was showing up here in the interface. So it's quite nice that those error messages show through. The vSphere error messages are still pulled through into this interface as well. And we can see all of our virtual machines
certainly see the
come
VMs
through.
are there. We just had 2 before, and it was automated.
There we go. There's the message saying that migration said this VM's got an ISO attached that we can't access.
Gotcha.
But we can see resource usage, we can see CPU memory utilization here, and network throughput, all in nice, easy, friendly views. Should be getting even more virtual machines across as we go. if we look at the summary tab for our cluster, we can see some workloaders on there now. We can see a bit of CPU utilization, memory, and storage capacity in use. And really, at this point, we've just got ourselves a vSphere cluster with some storage. It's into that simple story of hyperconverged. Well, I think this has really shown what we wanted to show, was the deployment process. So we started with a bunch of virtual machines sitting on an ESX server. That was a standalone ESX server, and we started with 3 nodes that had been reset to factory configuration.
Brand new, right.
I think the only step in configuration that we skipped was setting the IP addresses on those ILOs. Because, of course, from factory they're configured for DHCP, but we wanted static IPs on them.
But that's not a big change compared to everything else we went through. We brought everything in. We migrated the VMs over. This would be, you'd be up and running here.
Yeah, and if I hadn't messed up our routing, then we would have been up and running an hour ago, and all of the migrations complete. The last virtual machine, it's actually a powered off virtual machine, is going through its migration now.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of watching on a stream, is when you get to that point where it's like, oh, it's going to take an hour for it to fix. Well, okay, skip ahead an hour, and there you are. And of course, we'll be splicing and dicing these segments out, so you don't have to sit through the whole 4 hours to watch it.
Yeah, so these, so Jeffrey's going to do the hard work to turn these into shorter and interesting videos, and do let us know if there's any specific piece you want.
Now that I'm a VM.
Now that he's a VM. So I think one of the ones you're going to have to do is the supercut of Al admitting the places where he's made mistakes and delayed the whole process.
Oh, don't worry, I'm going to actually auto-tune that. That should be a lot of fun. You'll be hearing yourself going, I made a mistake, whatever it was.
That may be one of the longest videos in the whole thing.
Oh.
No, the most watched.
Certainly the most watched.
With 5. 5 views. This says 3. No, I'm kidding. We'll have more views. We'll boost that one.
So yeah, we went through that whole process. Very importantly, I think this is the first time you're doing the process, is to follow the install guide.
Follow the installation guide, absolutely. That does walk you through everything, but we went through it as well.
And but I think there was a little piece around, we chose the most complicated way of deploying it.
Yeah.
If we'd gone with using the embedded vCenter and building it as its own separate silo.
Correct. If it were standalone, we wouldn't have had to go through some of these other steps. But you'd have integrated vCenter. All the steps are sold in the deployment guide. The fact that we had an existing deployment, it just adds to the complexity. But if a customer has to go through that in the installation, this would show them the basic outline of what to do.
All right. Well, this has been fun.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you could join us. And
we had that slightly terrified moment in the middle where the 9 minutes and 2 second countdown got to 2 seconds and didn't hit finish, but we worked through that one.
We did good through it. We had a great support team. Thank you, everybody.
It was pointed out that we already knew the solution to the problem, and that's pretty standard too.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, is there anything else we need to tell the lovely folks out there? I guess follow us and...
Yeah, follow us. I suppose I should turn myself out. Go ahead and follow us over on Facebook. Go ahead and follow us. Let me pull that up. Over on YouTube, just look for vBrownBag, and there you are on Twitter, on Facebook, and use that hashtag HC380 Build Day so we can find your questions and comments. If you like this, if you got a product that you want us to build with you, let us know. And let's get together. Of course, lots of podcasts. There was a podcast that was going on last night with Tim Smith over at vBrownBag. So check that out over at vBrownBag.com. And then, of course, all the technical documentation, which we have links up on vBrownBag.com/BuildDayLive for the HC380. Go there and you can download those, or HPE's website.
Yeah, there'll be a few more links added to the collection on that page in the next 24 hours. Links to the download page for the HC380 and the install guide. We'll make sure those are direct links if you need to go and read those. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Richard, for persisting with us,
Glad to be here.
The whole team online.
Sure, no, thank you.
And
Thanks,
to be here.
thanks to Greg, and thanks to
Yes.
Broth for coming on.
Barath for coming and spending some time with us.
We got a couple more videos. We're going to be talking with Broth tomorrow, and all of that will be up on YouTube, vBrownBag's YouTube channel.
All right, I think that is the successful conclusion of the first vBrownBag build day. HPE's HC380. Thank you very much for joining us, and keep a watch out for futures. We definitely plan on doing this again because we really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Thank you.